she's left-handed. And in the 1940s and 1950s, she told me a story when she was a young girl going to school, they would try to correct the left-handedness.
Right.
So they made her wear a mitten on her left hand so that she was forced to write and do everything on her right hand. And the teachers were like, and she didn't want to. It was off. She didn't like it, right? She wanted to write with her left hand. And the teacher's like, no, we have to correct this. It's a deformity. That's what they called it. A mitten on her hand in school. So one day she had a new teacher came, was younger, and said to her, Millie, take the mitten off.
Nice.
And Millie took the mitten off and stopped conforming to the expectations. The moment she shared that, we look at each other and she looks at me and I knew what she was going to say. She said, I think that's what dying means. It's taking the mitten off. All those expectations that life puts on us. And then I said, do you think then if that's what dying is, taking the mitten off, maybe that's what living should be like too. Take the mitten off.
That's beautiful. Oh, I love that.
And accept the reality of who we are, what we are, what's important to us. Because the expectations are so many and come from so many different directions.
Welcome to the Relationship Psychologist Podcast.
Tune in every Thursday to learn with us as we interview experts.
And laugh with us as we banter about friendship.
And take action by implementing the tools and advice we provide to you each week to level up your personal relationships.
I'm Dana Mullen.
And I'm Alicia Hinger.
We are soul sisters, besties, and psychologists on a mission to change the culture of relationships.
Your journey to becoming more supported and connected starts
right now.
Welcome to the podcast.
We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You guys were talking before we're recording. I'm like, wait, hold those thoughts.
They're great. I know we're already halfway into it.
Right? I just pushed record. Hang on. Okay. Darrin Parkin, longtime friends. Been a long time. Honestly. Seriously.
Too long.
Right? So good to see you.
You too.
So the intro you gave me says, Darrin is the spiritual clinical clinician at the Harvard General Hospital, serving patients, residents, families, and staff members during times of health crisis. Focused on palliative care. He's been a hospice, end of life, as well as grief and bereavement chaplain for the Hospice Calgary. For many years, Darrin was a prison chaplain, which is where I met you. Currently a conference speaker in all areas of hospice and palliative care, as well as grief and bereavement. That's your intro. My intro is Darrin.
Holy shit.
All right.
I don't know if I want to hear your intro.
Okay,
I might blush. Dana saved me. We walked some miles together.
We did a life sentence together in jail.
Totally did. We did more time than most of the inmates.
This is true. This is true. Worked many times. So just for those listening, we worked at the prison system together in Alberta. But prison chaplain was your title then. But you're kind of the guy to ask. Like I was kind of going through my own, like, don't know if I believe in religion, kind of struggling with some of that stuff. And I just loved how I could go to you and talk to you about things. You said some things to me. Like one of the things you said to me, I remember. You did. You gave me some really good insights.
Do tell.
Yeah.
I feel good about myself.
One of the things you said, I don't know.
Give me a boost.
There was this like thing about, the churches being judgmental. And I was struggling with like judgmental of like all the things.
Yeah.
And so you said one time to me, think of God like a parent, like a dad or a mom, like a parent. And how long do you want them to stay mad? How long would God want you? And I think I had some guilt about like success, because my blueprinting very much is like, be who you are, don't ask for more. Like, how dare you? Who do you think you are?
That's true about you.
It's very much it totally is. And I'm always like,
I remember.
Right. And I struggled. I was like, I kind of want more and I want to like learn and I want to grow. And I kind of, that's my personality. And I was really having lots of guilt about like, I should just be thankful for what I have and just stay in the box and not thinking out.
Stay small.
Hide
your light under the table.
Oh, and
don't let it shine too brightly because it offends others.
Yeah. And so the reason I think that I shine in my life is because you gave me some good advice. But I still struggle with it for sure. Like I still feel it, but I echo your words. It's been like 20 years now.
Really?
Yes.
I have a tip jar in my car. You can put money in it. That bill's long overdue.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It's true.
And vice versa. Without your role in the work that I did, there's a big part of what I do where you encounter somebody, especially in that group of people with suffering from all kinds of stuff, addictions,
everything.
But then the psychological depths of the personality disorders.
Right.
So I would encounter people professionally that I'm like, this is something I don't understand and I'm not equipped for. And I would have and still do not typically have no way to measure what that is.
Right.
Is that a personality disorder? Is that borderline? I never knew these things.
Right.
But we all run into people occasionally who you go, they should see somebody.
Right.
So when you would do your work, and sometimes that helped you because we almost sometimes would be good cop, bad cop, right?
Yeah.
You had to really take a guy's guts out.
Yeah.
And then I had to put them together.
Yeah.
Oh, look at you guys. I love it.
It was a little bit good cop, bad cop. And it
was.
worked really well. And I still do that. If I have somebody in my work world today,
Nice.
when we're working with families, there's always a component to that.
Nice.
Somebody can step in and play bad cop.
You're like, where's my Alicia in the room?
I know. So you would actually do a diagnosis, a formal one. Because I'm a believer that only people qualified to diagnose should diagose.
Yes.
None of this Google armchair diagnosis because your neighbor pissed you off.
Right. Everyone's
which happens all the time, and it's pissing me the hell off.
Me too.
Right?
Yeah.
When you would do that, and I would see, okay, this is a genuine diagnosis, because we were lucky to have both female inmates and male.
Yeah.
So when you do different diagnoses, I could see, okay, so there's the behavior. Now we have a proper, formal, qualified diagnosis. So that's the measuring stick that now works, right?
Yeah.
I understand it.
Yeah. And then
that was really helpful, because what I learned is with pure, let's say, psychopathy, let's say malignant narcissistic personality disorder, there's no cure or treatment for that. I learned that from you. My profession,
empathy, you're like, you're making them worse.
Exactly.
Better.
My profession, we're supposed to bend over backwards and help those people get better.
Yeah.
And I've seen it happen in the communities I've worked in, where for good intentions, often clergy will, we want to welcome this guy in our church. And there were inmates where I'd say, you do not want this guy coming there, because he will have a 13-year-old prostitution ring in your youth group within a year.
Yeah.
Oh,
because that disorder is not treatable or curable.
Yeah.
And I would sometimes get back from those clergy, we can heal them through faith and through Jesus and make them better.
Yeah.
I'm like, so part of our role when people were reintegrating was helping communities, be aware that, there's some concerns.
There's some serious risk factors.
So that was what I learned. So for the work I do in spiritual care, I always need and benefit when professional therapists are around me.
Yeah.
Because then I say to people I work with in grief, and it can be very therapeutic, but what I do is not therapy, and it's not a substitute for therapy. What I do is I can hold the space for grief and intense pain. But when I see something that I think a referral would be necessary, I'll explain to them what we're doing is probably good and it's therapeutic, but formal counseling and therapy would really benefit you. And that's not what I do. So then I have people like you guys where I can send people to, and I do have a kind of list of people I can. But what do we know about referrals? How many people, once are comfortable with you and you're not not a therapist, they don't go.
They don't want to.
They don't go. And it really,
well,
it's one of those things.
It is. And Darrin, you kind of tapped on something that I think is important that we learn as therapists in our schooling is, I don't remember the exact stat, but I think it's something like 75% of the relationship or good therapy is the relationship.
Yeah.
So, you already
makes sense to me. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
When you say that, it totally makes sense.
Yeah. It's really, for the work that we do, it's a safe base, right? Like you became, for people grieving, you are this safe, secure place where they know they can come and they can say whatever they need to say. And you're going to be open and accepting and a place of warmth and safety.
Yeah. I guess in that situation though, too, because they're safe with you, then you would consult and you'd be like, okay, I'm going to consult with my therapist friend over here. And then they'll help me, serve you differently, better. To go.
So an integrated team works best for me.
Always.
Yeah.
Me, us too.
Oh,
I'm all about the integrated team still. Like I'll see a person in office for this thing. I'm like, who else do you have on your team? Or if I'm your couples therapist, who's your individual and who's your nutritionist or who's your pastor, whatever. Like the team approach is always always the best.
Yeah. When it takes, I think I like that saying when people say it takes a village to raise a child.
Well, it doesn't therapy, doesn't it?
Well, it takes a village to just keep going on in life.
Yeah.
You need it.
Fucking hard.
It is fucking hard.
It gives you some bullshit and some pain and all that. And
see, I like this guy.
He's very nasty.
I know. I got a little nervous at first when Alicia said we're having a pastor. I was like, well, who is it? Like, who is this guy? Because she's like,
I'm making short work of you, right?
I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, I'm a little nervous.
Wait till I get your feelings up on the table and I'll just do my magic. Look up.
Heck, I like it. Okay, I want to back up. Yeah, I'm going to back up. So, Darrin, tell us a little bit about like who you are. Where do you come from? Like, tell us a little bit about your family and how you went into this field of theology or whatever we call this.
Where'd I come from?
Where do you come from?
I wonder where the hell I came from.
Who are you?
Do we know who we are?
I don't know.
Do we know who we really are?
Who the hell are we?
Right?
We don't know.
Your last title was how do you really know your partner? Did
right?
you guys do that?
Yes.
Just recently?
Yesterday, I think that came out.
I think about this often working with people dying. And if I have a really good connection with them and their people, and I try to integrate into that, even when you do great work, sometimes I go in, I think in reality, I might know 1% of their true thoughts and their innermost stuff, right? It's wonderful that 1 to 5% or whatever they reveal, but we don't truly know ourselves, never mind the people that we're working with and
That's the
walking
goal.
with, right?
That's the work, is getting to know who you are.
So I'm an Alberta kid.
Alberta.
Get back to that, born here in Alberta, Calgary. We, when I was 10, my parents divorced. Great story about if down the road we come to my own grief. So my mom remarried my stepdad, who they're still together today. So they've been happy for 45 years now. I was just with them last night.
Oh, nice.
You're always that kid still when you're back with your parents, no matter what you do professionally here. In therapy, in the hospital, right? You go back there and they remember the shit you did and bullshit you pulled, and you can't get out of that mold, right? So they've been happy for 45 years. And so grew up in Fort McLeod and then graduated, was wanting to go to university, not entirely sure what I wanted to do. I had too many interests, still do. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do when I grow up still. But I screwed around too much in high school, playing sports and chasing girls. So I didn't have the marks that could get me into university. So I suck at math.
Oh, me too.
My math 30 teacher on day one, he looked at me and said, Stuart Reed, he was a great teacher. Darrin, you don't have a hope in hell of passing this course.
Ouch.
And I don't know if he cursed me because I did fail. So I had to do it in college. So I went to the college to get those things, intending to go to university, but played college volleyball. This is back when guys my height could do that at the college level. I know I pick a sport where you should be your height and above, right? So and then just did that, and then got into drafting and design. Did that as my first career back in my hometown after moving and living in Lethbridge. I worked doing drafting and design. And then made that decision where an opportunity opened up to go into kind of spiritual care, working with teenagers. So we did stuff on campuses, high schools, universities. And then the fun part was summer camp. So we had a horse camp too in Alberta. So it was all like horse based. And, someone might know a thing or two about horse therapy. Horses can tame the most violent, angry people.
And they don't lie.
They're honest. They're honest.
And they don't judge.
And you have a relationship.
Yeah.
It's very therapeutic,
and
right?
And they don't hold your stuff either, right?
They don't.
Well,
or do they a little?
They remember stuff, like
they'll remember stuff. They'll feel if you're safe with them, and because they want to please. I think they want to work for you.
Yeah, but they're also prey. So they're also like, if you're not secure, you've got something going on your body. I'm nervous around you.
And they pick it up.
They make you.
That's where they're honest, right?
They make you regulate your nervous system. Yeah. To be around them, you want to be regulated. And if you're dysregulated, then that's your work.
Is that what you do when you're doing horse therapy?
All the time
with people?
Yeah.
It's regulating what's happening inside.
Yeah. And so when they're dysregulated, I'm saying regulate my horse, but really I'm helping them regulate their own nervous system.
Yeah.
And then the horse drops their head and I'm like, good job, you did that to my horse. But I'm knowing their systems are also regulating.
And I have a question about this. This is a little side note, but I'm just curious while we're talking about horses. If I'm doing work with you and a horse and I'm unleashing some of, like, am I talking to the horse? Also, does the horse know? Like, does it remember? Oh, this is the one who came in like this. Like, do they have a memory? Do they automate the person?
So I think they remember if it's not finished. If they're left in that distress state, they just remember feeling they're just in distress.
Okay.
So when that happens in a session, I finish the distress state to come back to regulation. Okay. And so I want the horse to always leave eating and chewing and licking and farting and relaxed in a good state. Okay. So just what when you ride, you don't get off a ride after a bad jump or a bad experience. Don't get off and walk away. You leave in that state.
A good note.
You always end on a good note.
Wow.
So when you finish your ride, you get on a good note.
It's so much like what we do
like
with people, right?
Isn't
like we want to make, and probably the same for you. You want to make sure people are leaving as good as they can, as processed as they can, as in as good a state as they can leave in.
Yeah.
And as with horses, the trust between therapist and client is absolutely critical. So we often tell people when we refer them, if you don't click with the therapist, it's okay to not go again and find somebody else.
Totally.
That hurts our feelings.
No, but it's true.
Do this.
Yeah.
But you're not going to do effective work if somebody there's just not a
match.
And it's usually on their part, right? Because therapists are trained to be open and set the stage to let them come in and be comfortable.
Yeah.
But sometimes people are carrying things where they can't. Yeah. And it's just not with you. And And then they might find your colleague and they click with them and you're like, oh,
No, I'm good.
Yeah, that
It's
is
I'm good. 'cause I
right.
want
But
to
we
get
still
back,
have human ego that we do notice.
Yeah.
Effects, right?
we
Not you.
yeah.
No, I know you. You
Yeah.
may know. None of you go for you.
No.
You've solved that. Not
Yeah.
her.
Yeah, she's got big.
I work with her.
I'm just kidding.
I know the truth.
So then you had this opportunity to get into
And I
spiritual
did.
care.
So I weighed over this idea of leaving this wonderful, stable job
Yeah.
at 22, recently married, pregnant with our first at the time, and go into something that had fundraising, not-for-profit aspects to it. So I did, and I made the decision, did that for 5 years, enjoyed it, and realized, I need to keep this going further.
Mhm.
But I didn't go that track for education. So I went back to school for theology and religious studies. Came back and then did some work, kind of in parish church work. And I enjoyed aspects of that, but not the big picture of that.
Right.
And then because I was lucky, it just was a fluke of history, I was only half-time with the church. So I was looking for something else. And then the jail contract came up half-time.
Oh.
So I'm like, okay. And
Let's
that's where
go.
that started. So did that for the first 6 years there, kind of split between that and doing other things. And then I was lucky to get asked to be the senior chaplain for the provincial correctional system. So then I did that for the next 7 years, but based here. So I was still the chaplain at Lethbridge, but I had hiring and guidance roles with the other jails in Alberta and the interfaith.
Right.
And as a chaplain, are you under a certain denomination? Like, are you Christian based? Are you like, or how are you working with people and what framework?
At the time, so I kind of embraced the Anglican kind of tradition. So that's kind of the way I approached things with that religious faith there. But I realized too, and this was probably the precipitator of a real evolution for me that she doesn't know about yet. Because you knew me in that incarnation, not this one.
Yes.
So there was a religious, and especially God in jails, you can't separate the two. Religious faith and God in jail, in prison, it's been since the last 200 years.
Mhm.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of different church groups and volunteers came in and do all the services.
Mhm.
I started doing those, which is fine. It's just connecting with people.
Mhm.
But I enjoyed much more when I had all these volunteer groups. They could come in and do the Sunday, Wednesday, whatever. Inmates go to church more than non-inmates.
Right,
They do all the time, right? There's other things that
Some
happen.
They're
They
also
could pass kites, right? Pass a bit of drugs in the Bible.
Yeah.
We used to have these Bibles in the olden days. The olden days Bibles, the pages were not paper, they were onion skin. They were thin. They called them onion skin, real thin, because you have a thick Bible, you don't want it to be this big. You want it to be this. So they have these thin pages. Inmates discovered they make great rolling papers for their drugs and their cigarettes. So you get your Bibles back, smoking Jesus, right? You couldn't figure out why they're all so holy. Well, no shit. They're smoking holiness all day, every day.
Well, they were just
So we were
celebrating.
going through Bibles like crazy, and then we realized, okay, we should probably substitute for paper Bibles. So yeah,
that is a good takeaway.
Oh, that was learning the angles that they would play on us, right?
They're smart.
Remember?
They're smart. Oh, there's so many angles. You could tell us some stories.
Oh, they could go on all day.
How they brought in like a 2-6. That was
I just told that story yesterday to a nursing group.
I was impressed. I was like,
I'm like, wait, I'm going in all proud of myself.
Not the ones you get on the airplanes.
No,
and not the Mickey.
A full 26er.
Into jail.
Mhm.
Yes.
Into like,
I just
room.
told
I was like,
yep.
We should let her keep that. That's impressive.
I mean, the work she put into bringing that in,
She
because she was strip searched on the way in.
Yeah, so she was strip
So
searched.
you tell me.
And host,
And then when I heard the story, I was, no way, that's bullshit. You guys are lying because you think I'm going to fall for it. There's no way she brought a 26er in here. No way. And then the other staff, remember, they're trustworthy. They're like, yeah, she did. And we have it.
I talked to her after.
Is there only,
Did you
there's
really?
only,
do you remember her? Yes.
Yes, I do. I'll never forget her.
so there's only one place that you can do
Yes.
this. And so
yes.
it's the place.
Yes.
Big cavity.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Yes.
So I didn't.
Where the babies
well,
go,
that's-
that cavity.
I didn't believe it. And then I'm like, well, I guess in a way that's the only option.
Right?
It
I
must
just her like, well done.
Oh, yeah.
Well done.
Well done. You deserve to
You
drink
deserve to
that.
and you keep that.
Get shit-faced, and the chaplain supports it.
I support it.
As the psychologist did.
she was
She was
making
good.
a real magician,
good.
that one.
She was
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
She had an interesting story.
Real interesting
She
story.
married very well. into an educated, very educated and well-off situation, and was doing extraordinarily well. Was in a city bus accident when she was pregnant and lost her baby. It was the beginning of her grief decline to then, I don't know how many years later, she'd had like 75 convictions, and she was like a regular at the
and
gym.
like her
Everybody knew her well.
face was so beat up.
Oh
like,
God, she'd been through literal hell, right?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Smart. You could get her,
Very smart.
You could get her in jail and she'd be sober. And like,
oh, she's great.
Brilliant to talk to. I really liked her
Absolutely.
actually.
Well, and
She's
that's
great.
Yeah.
That's the thing when you're in that type of setting. I did an internship at the Edmonton Institution for Women. So I was there for a year and
You didn't tell me that.
yeah. And, but
That's
it is
the real deal, Dan.
yeah, it was a real,
Shit goes down there.
yeah, it's a fun place. For people who don't know, they live in houses
Yeah.
and they create their own little pseudo families within those houses. And it was a very interesting place to work. But what I found was that these women could, because everything was so structured, they actually could do those things like go to church or go to, to the Aboriginal at the time, Indigenous, I guess now, like leader, and they could do stuff there. They could get education. So sometimes these institutions are really quite fabulous for
very much.
Except when they get back out.
So we went to Maple Creek together one time. Did you
We did. We went to the
It's
healing
like-
lodge. It's
yeah,
a healing lodge.
healing
So
lodge,
there's no
very
fence.
similar,
No fence.
Yeah.
They're out in houses.
Yeah.
They can run away, but it's way out in the middle of nowhere in
Yeah.
the Cypress Hills, so
Yeah.
you wouldn't get
Wouldn't get
anywhere.
very far. Yeah. The same idea. Yeah.
So
Wow.
so coming back, so it did start off as, which religion were you saying again? Anglican. Okay. So you started off there, but then you've had a shift.
The shift.
Well, so early on, I realized, okay, my best draw, because I was running all kinds of different programs and I had groups and volunteers to help with that. Then I found what I enjoyed the most is taking a small group of the guys and working through, let's say, a 10-week course on their addictions. We did a couple of those together. Remember Wild at Heart? We did that one.
That was fun. Those were good.
And so what I found was from a more clinical point of view. So prior, a lot of my work was more program based. As I went further into doing that, I realized I was drawn to and enjoyed more drilling down and getting a little bit more clinical. So getting a group of guys, building trust, making sure that they trust who's in the room. So we would start a 6 or an 8-week course or something on addictions and spirituality or something, make sure everybody's comfortable with everybody else in the group. There are no beefs that go back to the unit, and otherwise nobody's going to share. Well, if you create an environment like that, they will share. Men will share.
Wow,
and violent men, criminal men will share. And there were times it went very deep. So for me, having you there, we could go deep, but for me, not as a
we could go all the way
non-therapist,
to the trauma. Like
you were
right into the
there.
depths of the
You were there to
trauma.
guide that.
Yeah.
So it was just
It was really profound.
so I found myself being evolved, unbeknownst to me, doing this stuff. And then I think years later, probably around 2010, I started to realize, because we get so busy, we don't stop and reflect on our own growth, right? The impact on what we do as a therapy, quote unquote, healer, and what our perception of ourselves is as we evolve through that. We're so focused on caring for others that we often neglect what's happening inside here. So taking some time to think about things, I'm realizing, I'm becoming more like what I was when I grew up, which was not religious, but drawn to areas of how people heal and how to support people, caregive, right? And more at a depth level than, a youth event with 500 kids. We used to, do those like late night with David Letterman type shows with 500 kids, all program stuff.
Yes.
That was fun and great, but I felt drawn more to more clinical depth to it, and found that because the people I'm working with most of the time were not people of a religious faith,
Right.
then the evolution with supporting them, somehow I think I was dragged along with that. So my evolution continued, and I ended up closing the circle, coming back to what I was when I grew up, which was not religious. So then instead of saying, well, now how do I do this? I had some options because I was a bit more evangelical in my outlook with faith, even though I was an Anglican. So I'm like, well, I don't really fit with my evangelical friends because the theology now, I just can't buy into this. I cannot accept what I have to accept, which is that if you and I don't believe the right things in life, we might go to a place when we die that's not pleasant for the rest of eternity.
Yeah.
I could not square that circle. I could not do that. And I had to.
Wow.
Because that was my role.
Yeah.
And when I did
That's
the
cool.
church
That was
thing,
really
Sundays, I just,
Yes.
read this stuff and we had to talk about it because you can't just pick and choose. Okay, I'll talk about the lovely parts of the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this other
These
stuff that
bits.
I don't
Yeah.
know how the
Yeah.
hell we're going to do this, we just
Interesting.
ignore. So I had to face hell
Yeah.
and dismiss it. The problem is I was tempted though. I was tempted to go and join, let's say, maybe I could go back to a seminary and become a United Church minister. Because the lovely thing about the United Church is you can believe anything.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't mean that negatively. They're very
Right, they're very
open-minded.
open.
They
Yeah.
are some of my turn-to people
Yeah.
in my work still to this day, because I know that if I'm working with a gay family member,
Yeah.
I know that I can bring Susan or her husband David, who are ministers in High River
Right.
in the United Church,
Okay.
and they can provide amazing spiritual.
How about them
care.
Catholics? How do they do with the gay people?
That's a work in progress. But so here's my dilemma. Do I take what I had as my belief, which was pretty consistent with what the Bible actually says,
Mhm.
but I couldn't square some of the things in it. So do I revise and reinterpret it the way my mind, whatever the hell that was, wanted to,
Interesting.
and join a church that let me do that?
Right.
And then just mythologize and deliteralize the scriptures
right.
that teach these things about
Right.
hell and division between people, because
It's a
you're either
metaphor.
saved or dead. Yeah, right.
Right.
I could go down that pathway, but I thought, you know what? I don't think in 2,000 years of history that's actually legitimate. This says what it says.
Yeah.
So let's not try to change it because we don't like it, because it doesn't fit with
Right.
true human experience. Leave it as it is, and it's cherished by millions.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take that away from them.
Mm.
But for myself, I'm like, okay. So you know when you take your computer and you're like, it needs an update, so you take the whole operating system off. That's what I did.
Wow.
I took the entire operating system out. I would have said in 2013, I joined a thing called the Clergy Project. These are former clergy around the world who became atheists
Wow.
and joined up together. And Richard Dawkins started funding it and all this, just to find people, because some of them were still in the pulpit and they had become non-believers of the stuff they're having to preach on,
Wow.
but they couldn't say it because then they'd be fired. And then what do you do?
And then,
You got family, you're living in
Right.
that rectory,
yeah.
right? So that group existed. So for about a year or two, that was sort of a touch point for me as I was feeling my way into the darkness of not believing what faith said that I once held.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So
I
you
went
need
through all
some
that, like,
partners. You
100%.
need some partners along the way. So they suffice as that. So I did that. So I took the computer, erased the whole operating system, and started fresh and just said, okay, the word atheist, I'm not greatly comfortable with, because it means so many things, like a bunch of angry people that are swearing at people that believe in God, right? I can't believe that, because I care for people who have faith.
Yeah.
Right. I have Roman Catholics who are devout as patients. And I could never even let the subtlest vibe that I'm not a believer and I don't appreciate what they might believe. I could never do that.
Right.
Right. So for me, I ended up not using a word like that. I would describe myself today as a humanist chaplain.
Huh.
So
I love that.
Human spirituality. And then I got real jazzed. I mean, I started reading, and then this is what I wish I would have done when I was young. Now that I'm 23,
Right.
it's too late.
Yeah.
I wish I'd have gone back, and instead of worrying about religious studies and theology, I would have done anthropology. I am fascinated. I am fascinated by human spirituality before the end of the Ice Age, when we settled down and became sedentary. I want to know about spirituality,
stars, the galaxies.
Hunter-gatherers all over the world that were nomadic. That lifestyle, there's something about it that, well, for first of all, it's the longest period of time in human history.
And they were brilliant.
And now through anthropology, they have found evidence is it's scarce because they didn't build communities and towns because they were nomadic. So the evidence of what they did and how they thought is kind of tough to find, but there's a lot of work that's been done. So we do know a little bit about what our ancestors believed in terms of religion or spirituality. That to me is fascinating, because if we have been a species, and Homo sapiens have been, let's say it's 200,000 years, which is about, we're now getting closer to 400.
Are we okay?
They'll unearth something and go, holy shit, we got to rewrite this.
Okay, good to know.
We're older. So
I
I use this in the conferences I do. I say, let's say we're 200,000 years old, Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
Then imagine how long that is. Most people, we can't grasp that. When we say history, you and I will think, okay, what's the history of
yesterday?
Or France, right? Or the Roman Empire. When I'm talking about history that goes back long before we settle down into civilization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you look at it that way, if you can imagine 200,000 years, for example, that we've been Homo sapiens,
Yeah.
then after the Ice Age, we started to settle down. We started to do two very profound things. We domesticated plants and domesticated animals. We never did that before.
Yeah.
We didn't eat carbs and sugar before.
Yeah.
We didn't have it.
Yeah.
Right. So then now that we're doing this, we now, for the first time in human Homo sapien history, we have more food than we can consume in a day,
Right.
which means we have to store it.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're developing different people's roles, and then we have this stratified society, which did real damage to the gender men and women relationship, because what were once egalitarian equals now has a hierarchy and a patriarchy developed. Then religion came in and embedded all of that and reinforced that and described women in certain ways that were not very flattering and not very advanced and not very good. And men were kind of given that kind of key distinction as superior to women.
Head of the household.
That was not how we were prior to that, because small communities of 50 or 60 hunter-gatherers, everybody's got a role, and that would be a big community. Everybody had a purpose. You want to know what the problem with men today is? They don't have a tribe where they have a purpose.
Right.
So they turn to all these other things to try to cope. That wasn't the way that it was. So then time goes on, we're settling down, we're becoming couch potatoes.
Right.
Then we, for the first time in human history, religion enters the scene, the big ones that we know of. First one was Hinduism. Then we get Buddhism out of the far east, and we get Judaism, out of which we get Christianity, out of which we get Islam. All of those are no older than 4,000 years.
Right.
So if we are here and have been Homo sapiens for 200,000, and here we are at 4,000 years old.
Yeah.
So imagine a football field.
Yeah.
You're a football fan. I know
Right.
that. I'm not so much. Jay is a
Yeah.
huge football
I kind of
fan. Are you a football fan?
not. Yeah. But
Okay,
the field, I can see.
I'd use a hockey rink. If we're Canadians, I should use a hockey rink.
That's
Nobody knows how long a hockey rink is. I don't remember.
That's
Right.
true.
So imagine a football field, 100 yards.
Yeah.
And that 100 yards represents 200,000 years of Homo sapien life.
Yeah.
Our experience with religion
Yeah.
is 4,000 years.
Yeah.
It fits inside
2 yard
the
mark.
2 yard line.
Yeah. 2 yard mark.
So my question is, spiritually and in terms of life and death and grief and pain and meaning making, how did we understand our spirituality for 98 yards of human life?
Yeah.
That's different, because nobody heard of Jesus, Muhammad,
Yeah.
Yahweh. Nobody heard of those
Funeral homes.
things.
They could think about that too.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally
Right.
talked
Taking
about
death out of the family. Like.
So what were we
yeah.
for so long? Because I think collectively in our psyche, I think we still carry the deep marks of a life of wildness,
Yeah.
Yes.
roaming, following where the lines weren't straight,
Yeah.
right? Look at our cities. Everything's square and
Yeah.
straight and left and right. And we're sedentary, and then wonder why our mental health sucks.
Right.
And life is not linear. It's sick. Like there's so much.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's so
like-
true. And we lost that.
We
Yeah.
did. We
We
did.
lost that.
And what I love what you're saying, Darrin, is that like there was a point for you, which I feel like in our journey in life, we all get to certain points where we're like, hey, what am I doing? Like I've been doing this job, or I've been in this relationship or whatever it is, and it's not aligning with me anymore. Like I moved towards it because I thought it was aligning with me. And then you started to peel back there and go, I can't keep preaching this. Like it doesn't align with me anymore. It doesn't fit. I'm trying to fit into it, but it's not fitting. And so it feels like you just keep peeling back the layers of like, okay, so then what? Then what? Like where does this originate? And this curiosity and this term that you use to describe yourself, is this like a term out there?
I'm gonna make it a term.
Which one?
The human.
Humanist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Humanist.
Humanist is a philosophy of life that says, rather than getting all of our ethical, our moral, our prescribed way of living from religious concepts that God gave to men and women, because nobody can actually really prove the existence of our gods. But from a psychological point of view, it sure makes sense that we project ideas onto someone really large and big and has power.
Yeah.
And when we see those projections, we read about the gods that we project, and they're strikingly similar to we are, right?
Yeah.
So we're both compassionate and kind and loving and altruistic on the one hand, and angry, unforgiving, violent, and judgmental on the other.
Oh,
so
true.
what's more likely? That a God who's so big that if you drop the universe in his eye, he wouldn't blink, and he is like that, where on the one hand, he's kind and forgiving. On the other hand, don't fuck around.
Right.
Or you're going
Burn
to
in hell.
burn in hell.
Yeah.
Right. Is that more likely, or is it more likely that human beings, as we're settling down, not trusting our neighbors up the river, project a God of our creation that looks a lot like us, made in our image, has that capacity for, and we do, enormous compassion and empathy, but also violence and hate and division.
Yeah.
Right. So what's more likely? That that's what God is like, or that we created him like that?
Right.
So that those are the questions that I'm like, never thought about this before.
Wow.
So that lands me where I am.
Yeah. Okay. So like last night, this is not in our list of questions, but last night, so I'm doing this mediumship / psychic. It's my year of spirituality this year. So I've done all the things. I did plant medicine journeys this year. I've done lots of fun stuff. And so we're doing readings on each other and we're kind of like tuning into, and last night the girl that I'm with, she's like, I don't know what to tell you, but there's like a white bird beside you. And I'm like, I don't know.
A white what?
Bird.
Bird.
And I'm like, I don't know. I can't think of anything. And she keeps going on. And then, this is yours.
Okay.
Yeah.
This chalice.
Yeah, the chalice. I got the chalice.
This chalice for the infidel. Cheers to the infidel.
I'm like, you're gonna bless the wine. Now it's gonna turn into fire. Oh my God.
I know. I'm gonna be so judged. We do not want to get together, walk into a church.
Right.
Some it's gonna burn down.
And
So I know what you seem very well. I don't know. I was gonna say holy, but 15 minutes into this, I'm seeing something else.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yes, totally.
Okay, so last night, so I'll make it fast. So last night, this white bird. White bird.
The medium saw this.
The medium saw this, yeah, and she's kind of new. So she's like, I don't know, does it feel weird? And I was like, I know. And then I kind of looked and I was like, oh, well, I bought Mo a white bird in his hospital room, and we talked about the white owl and the bird was, and I kept detecting feathers, and I was like, is the word Mo? And she's like, oh, now it's moving. What was that word you just said? Another bird. I'm like, oh my God, Dana's dad beside me. Yeah. And so that's where I sit. Like I sit very much in this. Like, so what do you make?
We're going to come back to that.
Okay.
If you don't mind, don't let me off
hold it. I won't.
And we'll tie it together because I work with dying people.
Yes.
And everybody, we should talk about this, NDEs, near death stuff.
Yeah.
What about the spooky, mysterious part of it?
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to know.
I love that.
What do we see when people die? So that'll tie in with your mediumship thing.
Okay.
We'll come back to
that.
I'll come back to it. Now, 15, 20 years ago, if you'd asked me that, I might have had a whole different opinion because the constraints of my own beliefs at the time wouldn't necessarily have room for that. They were very much like that.
20 years ago, like with Gilbert, like we would have those talks. And I remember we were having an inmate one time in Unit 4, and she was stuck in her, and a bird came to her, I don't know if I told you, came to her windowsill. And Gilbert said that that's the spirit coming to help her. And it switched her. And so Gilbert's our native coordinator at the time.
Okay.
I know he's called now.
Still our elder, even though we don't see him. I consider him my elder.
He's my elder.
He is my elder.
He's going to come on our podcast. He was supposed to meet us for lunch today.
I know. I was so bummed. I was happy to see you.
Right? I know. Gilbert,
and meet you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
You're not just an add-on, Dana.
Yeah.
Well, I miss that man.
Oh, he's amazing.
He came to Africa with us. Did you know that?
He told me. We had lunch the other day.
They were rock stars. Oh my God. And the Africans loved him. They said to me, I remember introducing, I knew this would happen. They were fascinated because is he a real red Indian?
Oh,
that's the only terminology, probably from some movie 1,000 years ago. And I'm like, I don't know how to answer this. Like, well, yes, but no, that's not what we call it.
Yeah.
So they were fascinated. So they started talking. I remember this one day, he and one of the African Ugandan leaders were talking together, and they discovered in their traditional indigenous practices, they had the same practice identical.
Right. So that's
unheard of.
That's what I'm leaning towards. Like this stuff, I feel like where you're heading towards, like this historical stuff.
Yeah.
There's so much familiarity in practices.
Yeah.
So much familiarity of like earth, energy, stars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
so where did all that beautiful stuff go?
Yes.
In the last 8,000 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And why not recover that and find out? Oh, so let me approach it this way for you guys. Do you ever get that feeling? And maybe your husbands do. Pretty sure Jay would. I don't know your husband, but I'm pretty sure because women will acknowledge this. You ever get this feeling like, this life that I live, I work every day, pay the bills, I drive this way, and then I turn left to go to Save On, get my groceries, come home and do the same thing tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever get the feeling like, fuck it, let's just sell everything and go somewhere where the feet can be bare?
They did that 2 years ago.
You actually did that?
Yeah, we sold our house with everything in it, every towel, every utensil, and everything that we owned except a little pod with basically our valuables that we want to keep.
And that's an adventure.
Three kids, a dog, 8 suitcases, and we got on a plane as immigrants and just went to Arizona.
No,
Yeah,
you did it.
She
You
did.
unplugged.
she did.
Oh,
That's so amazing.
You are a savage.
She is.
You are a
She's all
savage.
in.
I love that.
I do too.
So that's not uncommon. You actually did it.
They
We did it.
So I think there's something deep inside all of us
Yeah.
that hungers for that. Why not? That was 98 yards of our football field.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're living like this for 2 yards and wondering why we
Feel-
feel this little hunger to go rogue and go
Or why we're all
wild.
ADHD.
Yes.
To go with
Can't
the
sit
wild
still. I
things,
can't sit
right?
still.
Right?
Yes.
Right?
It's repressed.
Yeah.
Repressed. It's a repressed
Yeah.
fluorescence maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it sounds like we all align a lot
Wow.
more than I would have imagined, because I think of a chaplain as somebody who is in that box, right? Who is very
Oh God.
You're praying for you so you don't
careful.
go to hell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and it's like,
If there's
to me, I go back and reflect for a second. My graduate studies was 7-day Adventist university, but there was only one piece that we had to take that was religious, which was a religion course. And the teacher in grad studies was Hindu. And he came in and the first thing he said was, "Who believes that God is an authority?" And everybody put up their hand except me.
Yeah.
And he said, "How come your hand isn't up?" And I was like, "I don't believe that."
Oh,
And I wasn't raised.
I want this kid in my class.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
I was raised with my parents saying, I was like, "Is there a God?" And they were like, "Well, you decide." And they gave me a couple different kid Bibles that I remember listening to on audio, like on little cassette tape. They were like, "We're not going to tell you what to believe. You believe what you want to believe." And so I was always open to
That's great parents.
so
Yeah,
much.
great
That's
parents.
phenomenal parents.
Yeah, they were.
That's
pretty
really
awesome.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So you were that kid.
yes,
You're wild.
I am.
You are a savage.
Yeah.
You really are.
That's why I
We
like
all
her,
are, but we
right?
have to uncover that. We have to
Yeah.
take those layers off, right?
Yeah.
And I see this no more clearly than with dying people.
Yeah.
That's the hunger, which pisses me off about our health systems, AHS included. I should say kind things to any AHS listeners.
Yes.
We do our best, but we sometimes have archaic ideas.
Yeah.
One of which is, what is a chaplain?
Yes.
I'm gonna and
Put you in a box.
Yeah.
so your average person who comes into a hospital or a hospice for care, and somebody, a nurse or something, says, "Would you like to see the chaplain? Would you like to talk to spiritual care?" What's the first thing in that patient's mind?
They're going to pray me so I don't go to hell.
They're going to be religious. It's going to
Yeah,
be
it's
religious.
going to be religious. Yeah,
Right?
it is.
I have to overcome that obstacle all the time.
Yeah.
So there are ways I do that. The title, right? I changed in my hospital. I said, take all those signs down: pastoral care, take that down and put spiritual care.
Yeah.
At least that helps a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So, but in meeting patients and their families, the first obstacle I have to be aware of in my own psyche is that their assumptions are probably that this is going to be that,
Right.
Yes.
right? And one of the things I wish we did was never ask a patient when they're admitted, would you like to see spiritual care? I mean, if I was admitted, I would say no. They're kind of creepy. It's kind of a weird. I don't want that fucking weird person coming. I'm suffering.
It's Gilbert. I'm like, yes.
But we don't know
right?
that it's
You
lovely
don't know
person
that,
like
no,
that.
right?
I
Exactly.
know it would be someone
That's
that
who it is.
believes like you guys
Yeah.
do. I think it's going to
title.
be some creepy guy
Yeah.
that they keep up in the corner.
Yeah.
And he's
comes up and-
dusty and
Yeah.
he smells weird.
Yeah.
He is like
Yeah.
it is. There is a visual.
I know.
If you said humanitarian or humanist care, is that the word that
Yep.
you? Yeah.
Yep.
If you said humanist care, it'd be like, would you like?
Sure.
I'm a human. That care for
Thank
human.
you. Thank you.
That's me.
Yeah.
That would mean.
Can you talk to HS for me?
Yes.
But I swear there's a troll somewhere in an office in Edmonton or Calgary. Their job is to devise forms. They sit in a cave, an office.
A dusty kid.
Let me
And they're
see
dusty.
And they're dusty.
what kind of questions we can ask people when we admit them to care. And it's their job. They're divorced from the reality of human psyche and spiritual existential pain
Yeah.
and what that looks like. So would you like to see someone from spiritual care? And they feel they've done their job.
You're like,
They
yeah.
hand this to the hospitals and these poor nurses go in and the patients say, I would say no.
Yeah.
I would say no because
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to be
So
good.
what is that? Yeah.
Right? I'm
And-
going to see when someone's going to come and want to
or
pray.
human
Yeah.
care. Yeah.
Right.
Or they
So-
don't even ask.
Or the what?
Yeah.
The question?
Yeah, they don't even ask. Sometimes if you like, they never asked us.
I would
once.
prefer that
Oh, okay.
because I make it my work
mission
to go
to
anyway.
Okay.
I go anyway, or the nurse clinician, often a physician will say, Darrin, can you go and see this family? Because it's once you're in a place long enough, they realize this guy's an infidel. He's not a holy chaplain. He drinks like we do. He swears like we do.
Yeah.
He laughs and makes us laugh. He's stupid. He's dumb. He's
He's a
stubborn.
Yeah,
human.
He's a
he's a
human.
human. He's a humanist.
Right? So they'll send me in because they know, and they've gotten to know me now that when there's complex family stuff coming out, as it does at death and dying,
Mhm.
that they'll throw me in and
Yeah.
And I can go in there and help be
No, how
a bit
great.
of oil.
Like I'm thinking of my grandma was passing away, and I was long past my religion stuff. Then I was deeply into spirituality and energy, really. And so I remember I sat with her at the very end, and she was like, wanted to see me one-on-one just to talk. And I spent hours with her, and she was so worried about things about her upbringing that she had broken, like, I spilled the seed. I'm like, you enjoyed sex, Grandma, with your husband? Yeah, but sometimes it wasn't for procreation. I'm like, that's okay.
Oh my! Oh dear!
Like,
Heaven help me have pleasure.
Right?
That's so
I'm
wrong.
like giving her permission. I'm like, Grandma, well done. Like you
Yeah.
were in love with him. Like this
Yeah.
is like she had thousands of questions like that about almost like looking for this granddaughter who she knew was a bit rogue, obviously, to give her permission to be like, you're okay. And this energy, that you're going to merge back into is all loving. And you're really going to be loved there. Like you are loved here and you're going to be okay. It was profound.
So you journeyed with her?
I journeyed with her, and I actually recorded her. I have all our tapes.
And you journeyed from, did she move away from the fear of kind of that religious upbringing that was there?
I think that was kind of my little bond. And I did her eulogy and talked about her eulogy actually.
Okay.
And so 2004, she died in February 2004. Yeah. And I was pregnant with my son at the time. And she died.
You were pregnant with Drew that?
Yeah.
That was
then.
it? Okay.
Yeah. So she didn't get to meet him yet.
Okay.
I was like, can you just hold? But yeah. Just I think having someone come and do the human part, and with someone that's raised very religious and has all these fears.
Yeah.
I saw her laugh. Like I saw her laugh. I think in her mind, she still had to hang on to that she was very raised that way. So she was like, I'm still going to do the things to get to heaven. But I think I saw her being like, she was okay. And I'm like, I promise you it's okay. Like, I know your views are different than mine, but the God, you want to call it God, the energy that I belong to, that I feel and I know is all around me is not what you're afraid of. And I saw her go, okay. And she would smile and be like, and then she keep asking more and more questions. Like we spent weeks together asking these questions.
That's interesting.
It's amazing.
That's a great story.
He's really
glad
cool
you recorded some of that.
I recorded it all. Yeah. I have it all.
Is that going to be in your book?
Maybe.
Or if not, I'll put it in my book.
The book, right?
Can I have the rights to that?
The rights to the stories, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what.
Yeah,
that's the stuff I do every day.
Yeah.
But I do have to get somehow, and I've found ways doing this enough to get around those kind of expectations that are often there. So I don't identify myself right away.
What if family from them saying, "Oh my gosh, you're telling her that's okay. What if it's not okay? Our religion said it's not okay." There's probably all those.
Well, you have to learn. I think in this, you do this enough. You got to be pretty. Your radar and your antenna have to be pretty in tune to feel what vibes are in the family. Because 9 times out of 10, even with a religious family, there's always one that doesn't believe what the sister believes, right? Just this bullshit. I don't care about that, right? So if you only get your information and your history from one of the family members, you're going to get a color from what they.
Right.
So grandma's Catholic, very Catholic. I'm Catholic, she'll say. Yeah. But the other siblings are not and don't, and they know that mom is actually not that Catholic.
Right.
So and they think they're worried that the sister's going to employ me to help her and put the religious things in the room, in the religious part of the narrative, right?
Solidify her fears.
Yeah. So I have to go very careful not to get pulled in by somebody.
Yeah. Because
then somebody is not therapeutically careful.
Yeah.
Because they feel that the person is not objective. So I have to work around. I'd have ways to do that. I don't come in and say, never do I say, I'm Darrin from Spiritual Care. Would you like to tell me about your fears of dying and spirituality in the afterlife? If I could start off like that, what would you do? You would ask your bouncer brother and say, can you get that guy out of here, right?
Get the hell out of here.
Right. But
nobody's dying.
Here's the worry though, right?
We're in denial in this room, Darrin.
Yeah. Here's the worry. Canadians never say that. Get the hell out. We're too nice.
Sorry.
That scares me.
Wow, we're not there yet. I'm so sorry. You seem like a kind man. If you could go to the next room, please, and check in.
Yes.
Never again.
Yeah.
In the olden days, the chaplain would go in and they would pray with somebody. And if somebody didn't believe that, they would be kind and say, yes, okay.
Thank you.
That lovely man prayed for me. And that's it.
Leave the Bible.
But the work of dying and the work of grief, anticipatory grief, and all of the emotions and the relational nuclear powered things that come to the surface.
Wow.
You're not able to be a part of that because you're typecast as this guy that brings in the holiness.
Right.
Well, I made short work of the hospital. They now know me as not that.
Right.
They know me as the pagan,
right?
The infidel.
Yeah.
And then we are able to kind of get past that. And then once I make a connection, first usually with the patient, but certainly the family. So most of my work I prefer is not just patient to me.
Yeah.
It's the whole unit, whatever they are, friends.
Yeah.
They're 18.
Yeah.
Because families are not just family. They're sometimes the best friend who's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Who is family?
Yeah.
And then we can start the work of dying. And then there's trajectories that I can help them, if they're open to doing that, walk along
Yeah.
and dealing with the profound grief. And 9 times out of 10, if not 10, my own approach is, and I say this in conferences when I do some education on this, I'll say, I'm looking for not, so tell me about your person who's dying. I'll ask them, tell me
Right.
about your dad, right? Which I'm going to ask you about.
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
And I'll say, tell me in life where they colored outside the lines. I
love
don't want to know where they lived up to all the expectations, because sometimes the patient will think that's what I want to hear because I'm a chaplain.
it. Right.
So I have to
They were so
dispel
good.
that quickly. I want to know where you were wild.
Yeah.
Where are the things where you had to make amends even? Where are the times in life where you colored outside? What are the stories of hilarity that
Yeah.
now, because humor is very clinical,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because
Oh,
if
very
you,
much.
because the grief is
So
profound.
useful.
So if I've introduced, once they're comfortable and I'm comfortable with them and they with me, if there's an element of humor that we can introduce, they laugh,
Yeah.
guaranteed within 10 minutes, they're crying. So
Yeah.
now clinically, there's a spread in their emotions,
Yeah.
and then the stuff can start happening, right?
Yeah. So true.
So humor is great. And the humor in their family is they know the stories.
Yeah.
Dad one time forgot the car was in neutral and it backed into the lake, and they're laughing, and the patient's laughing, then he hurts because he's got
Right,
cancer. So they need more medicine
Right.
and all this stuff, right? But this is the work of dying.
Yeah.
And when that
Mhm.
vibe, that we call it holding space, that's what I do. I don't go in with what I'm going to say or impart. I have to go in, I have to listen. I ask them questions. I want to know this person, and I want them to reveal themselves and their interests in life, this family stories, all of those things.
Mhm.
And then that's when the work of grief
I love
can
that.
really happen.
Holding space.
Hold space.
Yeah.
I love that.
I'm not going to
Great.
prescribe a way you should die, what you should believe.
Mhm.
I'm not going to say we can take away your fears. And the fears aren't about the afterlife. I rarely find patients afraid of what comes after death.
Really?
Never.
Good.
And that's actually research and documentation on that. It's been
Interesting.
studied. The fear of dying is the bumpy ride to die.
Right.
The actual
Right.
physical, like
Physical.
yeah, like what
And yeah,
I've never experienced it before. Like, what is this going to be like?
I'm hurting now. Is it going to get worse? What am I going to look like? What's my family going to see?
Right. Yeah.
What if I'm drowning in secretions? They're going to hear
Yeah.
it, see me suffer.
Yeah.
I'm terrified.
What
of
if I'm
that.
not ready to go? What if,
What if I'm not ready to go?
Yeah.
What about that relative that the strange daughter that I don't see?
Right.
Is she going to come? These are
Yeah.
people's fears.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've asked even the question once. I know they know that I'm not looking for a religious answer.
Yeah.
Are you afraid about anything after death? No. I've had 2 patients in 10 years
Really?
that I know of. One I worked with, and she was ultra Latin Catholic.
Mm.
And the other one was one of my best
Type it in there.
friends, Blair. His dad, when he died, he left his religion as soon as he left home. It was a fundamentalist religion.
Okay.
When he was dying, suddenly he's like, what if they were right?
What if they're,
Oh.
yeah.
What if my upbringing, that fundamentalist religion, was right?
Right.
And
I get it
where am
right.
I going to go?
Yeah.
The only 2 cases that I personally know of
Interesting.
was one was my patient and the other was Blair's dad.
Interesting. And both-
Otherwise, it's the fear of the here and now.
and both had that scary religious background.
Yep. Yep.
Interesting.
Which impregnated in that is a whole lot of insight that
Yeah.
we can unpack, right?
Yeah.
What's going on? Why is that?
Why is that?
Why do we put that fear?
Yes.
Well, we know why, but why did we?
Yeah. And why are
Why
we
should
still?
we?
Actually? Why are
Why
we still? We know
right?
we don't need to do
And I don't want to offend any of your religious
Yeah.
listeners. And I don't often talk like this, certainly that any of the patients or family members that I work with in dying or grief
Yeah.
Mm.
to hear me necessarily talk like this. I can
Yeah.
do it in conferences and then I let it rip.
Yeah.
But I don't want to prejudice that Baptist evangelical
No,
Christian in their dying
If it
experience.
gives you love and comfort and
Peace,
peace,
yeah.
then all
If they
great.
ask me to
That's
pray with them,
beautiful.
then I will.
Then you will.
Right.
You're kind of like, it seems like a neutral kind
I
of
have to
just
be.
yeah. You're
Yeah.
neutral and you're safe and
Yeah.
and they'll guide you
Yeah.
on where the language is, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, they want to use that language. Okay, we can use that language.
Yeah,
It's
because it's
safe for
familiar
them.
to them
Yes.
and it's healing to them. It's
Yeah.
important to them.
Yeah.
So we'll bring whatever pastor, imam, priest,
Yeah.
we'll find a Latin speaking priest if we need to.
So you'll
Because-
bring in other
Oh, yeah.
other ones.
Oh, yeah.
If,
Yeah.
if they
Funny
want
story.
to.
I'll tell you a funny story. We had this lovely lady in the hospice. She was her and her sister. They were a partnership together. The most ultra Roman Catholic I've ever met, and Irish to the core.
Oh my.
Oh,
So Lula was our patient. I'll call her Lula, and let's say the sister was Mary.
Okay.
So Catholic that if they went to mass and it was in English, it's a sin.
Oh,
They probably don't like this Pope because he smiles.
Oh,
Right? They like the other one that was doctrine oriented, right?
yes.
Ultra Catholic.
Okay.
So Lula's our patient, and the Irish, they're so goddamn cheeky. They're
I
so
love it.
lovely.
Yeah.
They are.
In nursing care and in end of life care and in hospice care and hospital care, the patients we like are the rogues, the
Yeah.
wild, cheeky ones.
Of course
You
we
can't get enough of that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So Lula, we go into her room one day, and I got to know the sister because the sister's like, Darrin, you know, you should come back to the church and you would be a great priest, all this kind of thing. You should believe what we believe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Mary, that's all lovely. And I'm familiar kind of with what, so I would say things that are familiar. Then she'd feel like, okay, it's accepted.
Yeah.
here, right?
Yeah.
So Lula, she was the patient. She was much cheekier than Mary, like in that Irish way.
Yeah. I love it.
Like you knew, so you'd ask her, Lula, how's the food here? Oh, bloody awful.
Yeah.
Bloody awful. That meant she loved it.
Oh,
Because Ray, our chef, he was English. He knew that the Irish like mashed potatoes for breakfast.
Oh,
so you'd make that for her.
nice.
Oh.
So she loved the food. So the way that she told you she loved it was
Bloody
bloody awful in her Irish accent.
like
And cheeky, right? And how's the room, Lula? Oh, bloody awful. Bloody awful. And Mary would get like, she's so religious, she'd get a little bit offended and worried that now she's got to try and apologize for her sister to us, right? She's embarrassed
Sorry.
by this, right? And we kept saying, yeah, we love it. That's why we keep coming back. We can't get enough of her. She's just so cheeky.
I love that.
So then there was one day, oh my God, this was so funny. And when I came in, I think it was even more important for Mary to scold her sister Lula for how Lula would, be cheeky, right? So Lula was getting a little more cheeky because she was getting uncomfortable and, a little bit more cranky. And that's what we do. We're not offended by that.
No.
So Mary's like, I came in and now Mary's shift is instead of just talking to me, she's trying to scold Lula a little bit, and she does all that, right? She says, Lula, you should be nicer here to Darrin and the nurses. They're really lovely here. You should be much nicer to them and all this. She's trying to chide her to be better, right? And I'm having 17 fits inside trying to say, don't worry, it's okay, right? And then Mary said the most Irish thing I have ever heard. She literally said this. She said to Lula, she says, it could be worse. It could be worse, Just think, you could be out homeless out there without a bed, and here you are in this lovely place with this lovely bed and have these nurses and Darrin, so you should be nicer because it could be worse. And I had no words. I had nothing. And I'm not usually stumped for words. I had nothing. I'm like, what's worse than dying of cancer within the next 3
Dying
weeks?
homeless.
Yes.
Dying homeless.
Apparently it's being homeless,
Right?
right? I remember thinking at the time, I was thinking, what are the homeless doing now? They're probably saying to each other, it could be worse.
Yeah.
You could be up there at Rosedale Hospital dying of cancer. That's what I was thinking, right? But I had nothing.
That priest.
I had
Guy
nothing
who doesn't know what he stands.
Right?
Who is he?
Oh my God, we just loved it. So then Lula, lovely lady, she developed a UTI, urinary tract infection, right? Which is treatable, but it can cause a delirium. And it's painful, it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
So even though you're not doing interventions in end of life care, we do treat something that because it's not comfortable, right?
Yeah.
So, but to treat her in her delirium, she thought that the nurses were trying to poison her with these pills.
Oh.
That they were the devil coming in the pills.
Yes.
So she refused all her medication, pain meds,
Oh boy.
the antibiotics to clear up. So the delirium would have gotten worse, right? So we're stuck. So the nurse is failing. She's like 2 days without any medication. Right? She's hurting and she's in a full on urinary tract infection, delirium. Right. So the nurse is like, well, Darrin, you got a pretty good report. Can you take the pills in and do something, say something holy, bless them or something, right? So I'm like, I got, and I'm popping my chest, right? I'm going in there with these pills and I'm like, I got this. I'll show these nurses what I can do, right? I lasted 17 seconds and she threw me out, swore me out the door. I'm done. I was done. Oh, gone. Nope. Wasn't going to work. So then we get Ray, the chef, the mashed potatoes chef.
Yeah.
Could you take the pills? And we thought that'll work because she loves Ray. The English accent makes her mashed potatoes for breakfast. No, he lasted maybe a minute, 2 minutes. Didn't take the pills. So now we're screwed. Yeah. So with Mary and our clinical director, we concoct this lying scheme. We're like, let's find a Latin rite priest in town.
Right.
Because if he comes in, she's in a delirium. Logic, words, not gonna.
Nope.
She's not. No. That's not working.
Speak some Latin to her though.
But get the symbols of the collar, and I don't know what they wear. I thought he'd look like Batman when he got there with a cope and all this. Stuff, right? Old-fashioned priest, right?
That's
I'm like,
what I'm
if she
visualizing.
saw that, And he comes in there and does his holy stuff and his priestcraft. Maybe
Yeah.
she'll then, and it worked. We
It
brought this
worked.
priest. Yeah.
Oh my
He
God.
came in and we grabbed him at the door. He was a young man.
And was he dressed all?
Oh, he was dressed like
Yeah.
he thought.
Yeah.
Wow. It was
Good.
Batman incarnate with
Good.
all the
Wow.
symbols and
Yeah, good. Good.
collar and the whole bit, right?
Aw.
So we explained what's happening. And he kind of laughed. He says, "Oh, the Irish." He said that, right?
Yeah.
So we give him the pills. We gave this priest
Yeah.
the
Please
medication,
give her these.
and we didn't go in because
No.
we knew then she would get
You're
mad.
not, yeah.
Yeah.
So he goes in. Mary's there, and Mary's now super holy in her best
Yeah.
behavior because the
Priest
only
again.
Latin right priest in Calgary is now here.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he goes in and he did his priestcraft and all his stuff, and she took the medication.
Wow. Well done.
And she came back from her delirium because the antibiotic.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Good
she was
call.
back to her cheeky self and died peacefully in our care.
Love it.
It was beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's
So that's a lot of the work that
Yeah.
we do with, it's not, we call it the work of dying, and there is psychological, psychic, existential work in
Right.
dying.
Mhm.
And not everybody does it. We don't prescribe it. But if they're open to doing that, and sometimes it's more subtle and they don't even realize
Right.
that we led them down that
right.
Yeah.
path to do the work of dying.
Yeah.
And then all the grief and the stuff comes out. And, you know, and as therapists, you know, that's when you get the good stuff.
Right.
Mhm.
And
Oh, yeah.
if we had more
Beautiful.
time, they would be the ideal referral. And certainly I've referred some of the family members because now the family trauma relationships all come to the surface because grief does that.
Does that.
And lots of families have stuff. Every
Yeah.
family has some stuff, right?
Yeah.
No matter what, even loving families.
Yeah.
You know, it's lovely when you see families, everybody's on the same page. They want everything done that's best for mom, have a comfortable, peaceful death,
Right.
you know, but there's often times where family stuff.
Yeah. Their own
happens.
fears, their own stuff.
Yeah.
And if I don't have that stuff
Experiences.
going on, there's not enough death and dying, I don't want to, I want to quit my job. I'm that twisted person. That's
Yeah.
where I seem to
where
enjoy
you do
doing
your
that.
work.
Yeah.
It's
But it
great.
is very therapeutic. So if you were to tag team with me, and you were,
Yeah.
you would see the points where this is a great entry point. The
Mhm.
door is open. The therapy work that could be done because of the power,
Because- Yeah.
everything is distilled in those moments of death and
Yes.
dying,
Yeah.
and people are open. And now the therapeutic work, you know, could happen. It's
Yeah.
just because you're dancing right on that line of
Yeah. The kind of raw-
spiritual support,
Yeah.
but also deep
Yeah.
psychological stuff that's coming
Yeah.
out.
And they're thinking beyond this, you know, the little bits of their life, the content. They're thinking
Yep.
bigger. They're thinking,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
mortality. Make
And
you
I-
think about stuff.
Yeah, and I want their
Definitely.
stories where they're wild,
Yeah.
and that dispels the notion that this is a holy chaplain.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I
And
love
then the
that.
work of dying happens because
The work of
people
dying.
want to be at peace with who they really are. So we have to ask,
Yes.
what are we really?
Yes.
We are 98 yards of nomadic, savage living,
Yeah.
cavemen and cavewomen who had profound personal relationships in those tight clans.
Yeah.
And when people died in those
Yes.
scenarios, it's really interesting to us what makes us human. One of the fundamental things is our care of the dead.
Yeah.
So where in history did we start doing things? And that's fascinating.
That's fascinating to me for sure.
Where did we start
Start changing.
funerary practice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mortuary
Yeah.
practices.
World War II.
Well, what did we do even before that?
Yeah.
What did we do? So they've unearthed the oldest grave site in Kenya, 78,000 years, a child, 2 or 3 years old.
Yeah.
And they found it and they unearthed it and they did all the x-ray work on it, dated it and everything. And they discovered that this child was actually buried. Its little head, it was put in the fetal position.
Aw.
Its little head had a little leaf or leather kind of pillow. So they
Yeah.
propped it up. There were some shells, mollusk shells,
Yeah.
decorative things. And then the soil was different. They actually reburied. So that tells us that Homo sapiens 78,000 years ago
Buried their dead.
had this meaning making ritualistic
Yes.
thing
Yeah.
about the dead.
That's what
You
I
know,
mean.
wildebeest
I mean-
do not bury their dead.
No.
That half of the carcass is there from the crocodile.
Yeah.
The rest just run like hell to be safe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We go back and we sing songs and we have poems, we decorate
Yeah.
and we do those things. How far back did we start doing those things?
Yeah.
That to me is
So
fascinating.
interesting.
Long before we had religious ideas.
Yeah. So I mean, after the wars, I think we kind of made it into like this commercial thing rather
Oh,
than
yeah.
like a family tribal thing. We got around as a community and celebrated and did the stuff, did the process of death where we told
Right.
the stories and laughed and
Right.
cried. And
Yep.
I think that's
And it
so
went for
beautiful.
days.
Yes.
Like Indigenous funerals today.
Yeah.
That brings
You've
it-
been to one, the
Yeah.
casket comes in the door into the living room.
Yeah. Into the
Old
house.
houses, hundreds
the
of years
house.
ago,
Yeah.
their walls or doors were built wide enough
For a casket. Or a
to
box,
bring the
whatever,
box,
yeah.
whatever, into
Yeah.
the living room. They
Yeah.
prepared the body on the table.
Yeah. I got
The men were digging the hole.
Yeah.
Right. The community was involved. Now we
Yeah.
professionalized.
Now it's like out of the
Now
house.
we're-
Don't talk about it. Don't.
Absolutely. And so now our society is a death denial.
Because that's that word, right? I mean, words hold so much meaning,
Mhm.
and because we don't talk about those words enough,
We don't. We don't. We avoid it.
yeah, the
Yeah,
minute
they're
that they
scary.
say it, we
And
had
for good reason. It's terrifying.
well,
Yeah.
and it's funny, not funny. I don't know. We had this doctor when my dad was in the hospital, and what was his background? Like,
He was
where
Russian or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, Russian. And he would come in and he was so blunt. He'd say, "Oh, look, today you're eating, you got ladies here.
Yeah.
You
Lucky
could-
man, lucky man.
You'll
bowel
live
movement.
a couple more days. Congratulations. Okay, see you tomorrow."
Later. Yeah.
And my mom would just be like, "What an
Holy
asshole."
shit. Right. It's abrupt.
Everything he'd be like, "Oh, you're still alive, still
Wow.
here, eating, got ladies here, good, keeping you alive." Okay,
See you tomorrow.
we're like, okay, well, he's a human. We're still all here, and it
He
was
can hear you.
yeah.
He can hear you. Mo can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
we're like, and truthfully, I mean, I don't think that we didn't use those words. And I remember my dad even saying, like, in some of his spells of being frustrated because his body, like, I felt like my dad still felt like he was 23 years old.
Yeah,
He was
did.
like, he's like, "Okay, let's get up.
Get out of
Let's
here."
get up. Okay,
Oh,
let's
yeah.
go. Let's go."
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I'd be like, "Oh, Dad," and I'd move his legs and I'd try and sit him up, and then he'd be like, "Okay, put me back. Okay,
Yeah.
Dad, I'll put you back." And so we would do this
Yeah.
little ritual, but there was times where he would get so frustrated. He'd be like, "Do you want me to die in here?" And I was like, "Do you want to die in here?" Because I was like, I don't know what to.
Do we move you?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't. Well, where do you want to go? And he's like, "Home." And I was like, "Okay, well, home, like home, or like home with the
House?
door, the house, like, yeah, which home?" And then he would just, "Come on, let's go." And I was like, and it was
she'd be like, "Your
hard.
legs don't work." He's like, "What do you mean my legs don't work?"
So Dana, what was your dad's
Mo,
Mo?
Morris, but Mo is what we
So
called
he
him.
went by Mo.
He went
He's
by
right there in
Mo.
the fridge. There's his
Is
picture.
that him?
Yeah, that's him.
That's him.
Tell me what he was like.
Yeah.
Oh, he was a wild man.
Where
He
what
was-
color inside the lines?
Oh, everywhere. He made school teachers jump out of the school and quit.
Yeah.
He was a farm boy who was very sensitive. So he had two sisters, older sisters. He was the baby, and big family gatherings. Everything was like 50 plus people on this massive farm. They had a 7,000 square foot house, which is crazy huge. Yeah. And his mom was the leader. She was the one who was the boss, and Dad knew how to follow. She was a strong woman, and everything was out. His life was outside of the line. So when I would ask him questions at the end, like, tell me, I had this book, it was called The Story of My Life. And I would write in it and I would ask him these questions, and I would say, like, "Tell me about, something that a secret you're holding." He's like, I can't go there, Dana. And I was like, "Okay, tell me about your first heartbreak." And he's like, I can't go there. Like there was secrets that he held in his life, but this was a wild man. I could say stories for.
But you're able to
hours.
talk about even that he had those secrets with him
Mhm.
at the end of his life.
Mhm.
Yes.
You had those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
with him.
Yeah, I kept thinking she's like my best friend, but like we say soul sisters and everything. Like I always think, like, what would Alicia say? Like, because like there's times where I'm like, I get into a
Still
freak.
haunts my brain.
Still
so
haunts
you
you
know.
too. Yeah. Like I'm like, what would Alicia say? She'd be like, have the conversation.
Ask the question.
Ask the question.
question.
Ask the question. I'm like,
Come on.
so what are you thinking, Dad? And my dad was somebody who also saw things his whole life.
Yeah.
And so did I as a kid. So I saw what people would call spirits.
Okay.
I saw things,
Colors, auras, or spirits, or
actual, like
in
it looked like
dimensions.
see-through people,
Mhm.
actual see-through people.
Uh-huh.
Um,
He would.
and my dad did too. And my dad
He did as well.
Well, at
He
the
did it-
end.
So
one of his
you
last
guys had
days-
a
Yeah.
connection in your relationship that shared that
Uh-huh.
since we,
common thing
Yeah.
yes. And I would up
through
until
life. When were
through
you
life.
first aware of that?
Young, like 6.
Okay, about yourself.
Yeah.
When you were aware of it that your dad was similar.
When I was 16, when his mom passed away, I would wake up in the night because he'd be like, hey, and I'd be like, Dad, what? And I would run out from my room because it was just around the hall. And he was like, I don't know. I think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I think I'm schizophrenic. And I was like, Dad, you're not schizophrenic. What happened? And he's like, my mom was there in a younger form at the end of my bed. And I was like, well, she's just visiting, Dad. Just talk to her.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, Dana, go back to bed. And so we didn't talk about it much further than that, other than he would tell me, oh, I had one of those experiences again
That
last
very
night.
last date, he's like, either I'm crazy. And I was like, we know you're not crazy. Because he said that too. Like in the hospital, he's like, maybe I'm schizophrenic or not, but because he was seeing the birds, or whatever. And I think I came that day and was like,
Yeah.
yo, I kind of thought you died last night because you were in my house. I'm like, no, you were in my house. He's like, I know. I'm like I got out of bed and he was in this living room with me talking with my house. Mo was in my house.
And that's when he was still alive.
And I
You had a good friendship with him as well.
yeah, and he's like sat in his chair before, and I was like, I got out of bed and I was like, oh dang, he died. So I was like talking to him, whatever, and we were having a conversation. And then I was waiting for Dana to call the next day, and I'm like, she's like, hey, are you coming? I'm like, yeah, where are you? I'm in the hospital. We're gonna do a podcast. I'm like, did you see your dad yet? Like, I'm just waiting for him to be like, oh,
He didn't want to ask, right? No.
I didn't want to ask. And so then I'm like, oh, who in my house? He's like, I know. I'm like,
He said that?
yes.
He was aware.
What kind of dad did you have?
He's
He was
amazing.
extraordinary.
Amazing. He's amazing.
Extraordinary.
How old was he when he died?
80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happened? Was he diagnosed?
Yeah, well, he
What was
had
he
a lot of
diagnosed?
different things. So he had COPD, stage 4 prostate cancer that was in his bones and
Oh,
lymph nodes.
okay.
He had heart issues, massive heart issues. Is there anything else?
Diabetes.
Was the cancer
Diabetes.
the pressing thing that
No,
wasn't requiring care?
No,
Okay.
no.
What was his bone pain like?
He,
What was
yeah.
his
this
pain?
man stated that he had no pain. So he was on,
Was that true, or was he an underreported?
he was an underreporter,
Okay.
but he was a guy who, he never took a day off of work in his whole
Tell me
life.
the story
except-
about how he got his first job.
Did he love going to doctors?
No.
No. His first job
One of
that
those
he got,
guys,
yeah,
yeah.
his first job that he got, he had been in a car accident and he got flown out of the vehicle and he almost died and he couldn't walk. He
Yes,
broke
the
all
video,
kinds
yeah.
of stuff.
Oh,
And my mom, they weren't married yet, but they were dating and she was taking care of him. And he crawled into an
Interview.
office for an interview,
Like, literally
crawled on
crawled.
his hands because he couldn't walk. Didn't
Didn't just cancel. I just crawled in there. I was like, sorry, I'm going to be there. I just got to crawl my hands
Yeah.
with my back.
and the guy's like,
did he get the job?
he got the job.
Sure,
He got the
so
job. He got the job.
Anybody
Yeah.
that does that should be hired,
Right?
right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's
He
who
was
this guy
made
is.
of something.
He
Yeah.
is
He's getting no pain.
So-
And then you poop and he'd be like, put me back.
Did he
Yeah.
then did you get to the point where they realized there was some pain and get some pain medication at the end?
Just
Four?
the last 3 days they
Okay.
gave him Dilaudid, I think,
Yeah.
but only once a day. Like he only
Right.
asked for it, and
Yeah.
he was, and even up until
But he
last
didn't look visibly like he was uncomfortable,
Oh,
or
you
were
could
you
tell.
thinking he was?
Yeah.
was,
But you're not going to win that war
I
with
couldn't
him.
if I touched his leg like this or his hand, he'd be like, ah,
Yeah.
like he was in that.
But you're not going to convince
No, you
right?
couldn't. He was a man of. He was going to do life on his terms, and nobody
Fair.
was going to tell him
him. Fair.
what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you with
Hence
him when he
his
took it off?
daughter.
I was. Mom and I were. We held his hand and yeah, I mean, he was slowly breathing. We had right before that, the family was in there and we were playing charades and laughing, and he was just sitting there. And then my husband could see that he was ready, and so he's like, "Okay, we should go." And then we went out in the hall and connected, and then my mom and me and her twin sister were in the room, and Mom and I held his hands, and
And he died peacefully.
he told so peaceful. He was just slowly
You-
breathing,
You
and we were
with
like,
him for his last breath.
Yeah.
and we had our hands on his chest, and we're like, "It's okay, Dad. It's okay. You can go." At first, my mom was like, "Is it hard to breathe? Is it hard to breathe? What's up?" And I was like, "Mom, it's okay. He's not there. He's behind us. He's holding us. He's behind us." And we're like, "It's okay. You can go. We love you. We're going to see you in our dreams." And all day long, we had all had an hour of alone time with him to
Yeah.
just be like,
Yeah.
"We love you. And you did all of these things in your life for us. And this is how extraordinary you are." So we had
You
an
guys made
amazing,
some beauty out of that
Oh, we did.
painful journey. I'm sorry.
yeah,
I'm sorry. And it's very recent.
yeah.
Like 3 weeks.
And you're
4
very
weeks?
connected to him.
Oh yeah.
Still, right?
Still are. Yeah. He visited me about a week ago in my dream, finally.
Finally, because he visits her daughter. The 5
My,
Oh, yeah.
yes, my 5-year-old. She's like, he came in my dream again last night. I'm like, "Don't come to mine."
Yeah.
And he popped
That-
in.
that's another thing you should think about talking about sometime. How often people are just so frustrated, like,
Why don't
okay, why are you not turning the lights off? You're gone. You said you'd leave a sign,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing nothing. I'm not dreaming. So many people go,
Yeah.
they'll pay for the best psychic
Yeah.
Yes.
that comes to Red Deer or something,
Yeah.
5,000 people, and they're just, and you just know, and I'm like, oh God, I hope you get what you're looking
I
for.
hope, yeah.
They go and they come back, and I'll ask, did you get something? No,
Yeah.
right?
Why is that?
But-
Why do they pick and choose? Like, why?
I
He visited Liam and
yeah.
Michael and I had the same dream.
Yeah.
I saw him again after he died, and he was wearing like big glasses and his bell bottom pants and this like flowery big collared shirt. But I couldn't talk to him after he passed. I couldn't. He was like behind a veil. I could see him. He was talking. I was like, I can't hear you before we could hear him. And then we had the same exact dream. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what's it doing?
So he's still coloring outside his lines and into your guys'. He's still making his presence known in subtle ways.
Yes.
They're often subtle, I hear people will say.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's
Not
not very subtle.
not so overwhelming. That's rare.
Yeah.
Actually, most
It-
people say it's so subtle that you can almost believe that it was just a random event,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But he wasn't subtle in life.
No.
He wasn't subtle in
Why
life.
would
So
he be subtle in
Yeah.
death, right?
yeah. And I hope, I mean, in the dream, it was so brief. My mom had just said,
Yeah.
"Hey, Dana, look, your dad is here." And I was like, and it was a lucid dream. And I was so aware. And I was like, oh my God, you're here. And I just hugged him and kissed him. And I was like, he sit down. Like I was still thinking that he was old and weak. And like,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden he kind of just sank into like this like rocking chair. And then something woke me up. I heard a bang, an actual bang. And it was a real bang. Like, I don't know where
Yeah.
this came from. And it woke, and I was like, no,
No. Stupid bang.
Stupid brain.
We hate bangs.
I hate bangs. Yeah. So I didn't get to go back. But I mean,
How's your mom grieving? How's she doing?
she's doing pretty good. She
Yeah.
took,
How
so
long have you been
in,
married?
51 years.
Okay.
51 years. So my mom has him, throughout the house. So when he got cremated, they said he was really dense. And so they
Big
put him
man.
in 4 boxes.
Mhm.
Not just one. So he's all over the house.
Yeah.
So we have him, he's in the kitchen where the
Does
dogs
that
are.
fit for who he was in life?
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Should be everywhere.
Yeah. Well, he said to my mom, I
Yeah,
want to
the
be up
dogs.
there with the dogs.
Yeah.
I want to be up there in the kitchen with the dogs. Because all of our dogs have been cremated or in
This
the
is Mo. You're
kitchen.
drinking out of Mo's cup right now, actually. That's
Oh,
Mo's
is
cup.
that
right?
is? Yes.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well, hey,
yeah.
Cheers.
I know
to
it's
Mo.
water. Cheers,
Cheers.
cheers to your lovely dad.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry.
Extraordinary.
I know you would probably give anything for another day.
Totally. I think the thing with, he was in so much pain at the end. His last 2 years, it was so much more painful that he didn't get to be himself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The last year for
Yeah.
sure, like just massive pain.
Yeah.
So we have peace of like, he's not in pain and
Yeah.
he still gets to be with us. And he's in the house. And so we talk. So my daughter, my 6-year-old is like, so grandpa's staying in the box. he's in the box.
Oh, the questions of kids, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, he's in the box. And she's like, well, how old will you be now when you die? And I'm like, I feel like I'll be in my 90s. Like I just see like old, I've got long old hair. I'm old. I can see it. She's like, okay. And what about dad? I'm like, around that time too. Like, I'm like, we're just trying to talk because I'm like, I don't have the answers, but I want you to have security that it will be long time. Long time.
And you strike me as you guys are able to talk with her openly about grandpa's death.
Yes.
You didn't hide her from it.
No.
Remember how generations ago, our grandparents, kids, when death was around, they were put away somewhere. They never got to be a part of that
Yeah.
and have then really complicated process of grieving.
Yeah. And we had, because it'd been going on for years, like the steady decline, I would be crying and then I would tell my kids, I'm just thinking about grandpa. Like I'm worried about him and I'm just grieving. Like I would use those words. I'm grieving because I know it's coming. And we would talk about that. We know it's coming.
Yeah.
I always knew it would be the end of August. I always had that, but I was like, I don't know why I have that date in my mind, but I never voiced it to anybody because it felt,
You didn't want to put that out there.
Yeah.
Make it real.
yeah.
Right?
Well,
You had a hunch
And my dad,
because you guys had that kind of a connection,
he
right?
did. And there was a couple crazy things that happened. I mean, one, he died on the blue moon. The next one was going to be for 40 years.
Yeah.
And he was a very spiritual man. And in that sense of like connected, right, to stars and connections. And he, all of a sudden, he could barely talk that last day. Like it was hard breathing. His heart rate was really low. But all of a sudden, he just perked up and he said, 13767. And we were like, Dad, what was that? And he said, I don't know. Someone just asked. And I said, well, who? He said, I don't know. And then he kind of faded again. And this number, I Googled it. Like, I was like, what does this number mean? And I have it open on my phone because I've screenshotted
You want
pieces
it
of it.
handy too.
Yeah.
It's nice to revisit that story.
Oh, it's like, I Googled it right in the moment in the hospital. I'm like, Mom, this means this number is closely associated with spiritual symbolism. The lotus flower, the infinity symbol, the light tree of life. It represents growth, eternity, and interconnected nature of all beings. It symbolizes spiritual awakening and the purification of the soul. It serves as a reminder of the beauty that can emerge from challenging situations and the potential for personal growth. It's a powerful spiritual meaning that extends beyond love, money, and symbolism. It serves as a guiding light urging individuals to seek personal growth, embrace love and compassion, and align with their true purpose in life. It navigates our spiritual journey with clarity and purpose. And it goes on to talk about more things around that, but like that's what this number, I was like, he is telling us directly that this is what he's doing, and this is where he's going.
Profound.
Yeah.
That is a wonderful death story. I say that
honestly
in the spirit by which I'm giving that. I hope you can hear.
Yeah.
But if we have to lose the people we love, what a beautiful, profound. He did the work of dying.
Yes.
And you guys did too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We were, I mean, I feel like the gift for us is that we've been processing it for years.
Yeah.
It wasn't a sudden
Gotcha.
thing. It was,
Gotcha.
I would call Alicia and just be crying and be like, I feel so bad that I'm away from my dad, because I also left during his last 2 years of life. So we came back at the end of May, and he died at the end of August. So we got our time with him. And obviously the years before.
And regrets? Do you feel any regret being away?
You know, I go back and forth on that. And I don't, because I lived in alignment with my values. And I always said that to my dad. I'm like, you taught me to live life on my terms and to stay in alignment. And although my parents were really important to me, my kids and my husband were more important to me. And during everything that was going on, we couldn't live our life the way we wanted to. Our kids were getting depressed, and we had to go. We had to live in alignment. So I don't, and because I know that.
Would he want you to have those regrets then? Or would he have wanted you to do what you guys did, knowing that you'd come back and be with him, to put a period at the end of that chapter?
Yes.
For him?
Yeah. I think he's
a great,
live in your truth. That's his motto, like live in your truth.
Yeah.
It's outside the lines. Who cares? Live in your truth. Don't go by someone else's story.
Yeah. I know.
I wish I could have known him.
I know.
I wish I could have known him.
Yeah.
His dying to me was such a gift. Like I would just every day I would be like, I can't get to hang out with this person at the end. Like I just felt so every day, like it was sad. But I felt so grateful.
As well, right? You were doing
being like, I was just like,
Alicia and Jay were his favorite people. So they would come in the room and he's like, you know, Alicia, he's like, I love you guys. You guys are my favorite people. And I'm like, I'm right here, Dad.
Yeah, I'm your girl. I'm your daughter.
Grab my hand and be like, I'm just so proud of you. And I'm like,
and he's like, tell me about the podcast. I'm like, I do it with her. I'm the other person. And
Jesus Christ, what does a girl got to do for fatherly love?
Right? Be there for 3 days, doting on him for 3 days. I can be like, hey, Mike, you wake up. Hey, how's your day? He hasn't said a word in 3 days.
Yeah. That is hilarious.
Jay in the phone, he's like, Jay, get me out of here.
Get the crane.
That's awesome. You know, it's interesting when you lose someone close that you love. Will often help families kind of get I don't know if we can really get someone ready for what's coming after. It's until they get there, but we can kind of give some things. The way grief often works for us is we amongst if you can imagine the emotions we feel, like the colors of a rainbow, we still have all those normal colors, right? The red, the green, the yellow, the purple, whatever. And you lose somebody you love, now there's a band of black in there that was not there before.
Oh yeah.
And it should be there, I guess.
Yeah.
And when someone shared that with me, I thought that's a great way. That's how I view my own.
Yeah.
And that's how, and I don't think we would want to get rid of that, because that person meant so much to us.
Exactly.
That there's a part of us that should be melancholic and sad and missing them. Yes. And it's a way we choose to honor that person by we retain. We don't always live in that black, but we don't always necessarily really super fight it if we do find ourselves in it. Because the connections are great, but sometimes you just want to drink the tea together.
Yeah.
And you miss that physical.
Yeah, that's what
I
think that's the body stuff that your body's just like wakes up in these like states of like the black.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, one day when I die, I hope I die like your dad did. And I hope we all live like he did. I hope we, get rid of all the other expectations of who we should be and uncover who we really are. Yeah. I had a patient only 4 months ago ish, and she was dying. She was with us in the hospital, and got to know her. We started doing that kind of work, and when someone's really kind of open and able at that stage of her trajectory to do that, we were talking about her life. So talking about reflecting on her life together. And I've often said this: we learn more about what we do from the dying. Teach us so much about dying and about living.
Oh, yes.
And if we actually listen and stop kind of with our own need to impart what we think we know and listen, they're great teachers.
Wow. Yeah.
So this lady, she had this story that's been with me, and I use it all the time now as a great metaphor. She was in her 80s, I think. She's left-handed. And in the 1940s and 1950s, she told me a story when she was a young girl going to school. They would try to correct her left-handedness.
Right.
So they made her wear a mitten
Oh,
on her left hand so that she was forced to write and do everything on her right hand. And the teachers were like, and she didn't want to. It was off. She didn't like it, right? She wanted to write with her left hand. And the teacher's like, no, we have to correct this. It's a deformity. That's what they called it. A mitten on her hand in school. So one day she had a new teacher came, was younger, and said to her, Millie, take the mitten off.
nice. Oh.
And Millie took the mitten off and stopped conforming to the expectations. The moment she shared that, we look at each other and she looks at me and I knew what she was going to say. She said, I think that's what dying means. It's taking the mitten off. All those expectations that life puts on us. And then I said, do you think then if that's what dying is, taking the mitten off, maybe that's what living should be like too. Take the mitten off.
That's beautiful.
Oh, I love that.
And accept the reality of who we are, what we are, what's important to us. Because the expectations are so many and come from so many different directions. And we're so inclined to accept those expectations and then live them. And pretty soon, all the layers of who we are, we don't even know anymore.
Yeah.
Because we're covered in mittens.
I love that.
Right. So I love this. She taught me and us, when I share the story in honor of her, she taught us what dying is. It's taking off the mitten. And maybe what living ought to be. Take off the mitten.
Yeah. What mittens are you wearing right now that you can take off? That's a really great takeaway.
I love a simple thing like trying to correct left-handedness. How bizarre. How weird were we 60, 70 years ago? My goodness.
Yeah, I love those.
I
feel like you had like two different kind of visual analogies there, like of this mitten of how, take this off at the end of life and where, who are we really? Yeah.
And what you're leaving when we pass. Like you can tell stories of your dad for the rest of your life, and they're always going to land in this really safe, beautiful, resonant space. That's what we all want. So are we living our life and according to like leave that behind?
Right.
Is there not mittens off that people can actually know us?
Right.
We're like, she was nice.
Yeah.
She worked hard.
Yeah. Or just seemed fake or whatever.
Yeah.
Just like take those mittens off. And then the analogy of the rainbow, which I think is so interesting because that black one for me is like, before you lose somebody, you don't have that black part of the rainbow. And to me, that part it's now the part that's missing you. Like there was, like I'd said that, I was like, now there's a new part of me and it's a part that misses you.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that part before.
Yeah.
Now
That's a great way to say that.
She's the little part, like I have a visual of me as a little girl and my dad kissing me and just holding me. And like, I'm like, that's the part that is, she's new. She wasn't there before.
Yeah.
Because he was there.
And you get to honor her.
Oh, she's there
now.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I think for your viewers, are you okay sometimes if I tell that story when I'm doing education?
Yeah, for sure.
And that points of your dad's death story and his life story, because I love that. Because when he colored outside the lines, I would have loved working with him in the role that I did.
He would have loved working with you, and we didn't get that. So I'm like, that would have been phenomenal. Yeah.
If I can get there with patients, and we found ways to do it where it's not expected to be a religious thing, we get some of this good stuff. Oh, and then the stories come.
Right.
Some of them are not great stories. There's some shitty things done in life, but humans are humans. And you know what? Your people still love you.
Yeah.
You still love them. And now's the time where you can kind of laugh about those stories. And there's another phrase we use when that happens. And this is what your dad did and what you guys did. In the palliative end of life care work that we do, we have a phrase called turning towards the dying. Everything about living says we got to fight to take the next breath. Avoid death, avoid danger. Everything fights to live, right? What happens when you get a terminal diagnosis and now you have to make that 180-degree turn and come to acceptance and face that you're going to die? That's hard for us to do.
Yeah.
So we'll often get people and their families come and they're still in that state of, what we would call maybe denial. When you go to a hospice, there's one reason that you go there. You haven't been referred there because there's some chance. This is it. Your goals of care are now C1, your comfort care, palliative care for end of life. But people will come with a narrative. I'm going to go to Mexico. I'm going to eat apricot kernels. I'm going to do everything. The cancer is going to go away. We will journey with them very, very slowly and gently. Because you can't take that away from them right away.
Right.
We know what's happening. We know the scans. We know the science of it. But they need time to kind of come to terms with that. if we can journey with them, and if that's possible, then what happens is they'll do the turn. They'll make the turn towards the dying.
Right.
And oftentimes the patient, the person actually doing the dying, will make the turn before the family.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And then when I do education with nurses, how to be in rooms where this profound emotion and grief is, where they're all like, oh, I know that. I've been in a room where totally the patient was ready, but the family can't talk about it.
Yeah.
The effect on the patient is very lonely and isolating.
Right.
Because they know they're dying.
Right. So
they just want people to talk
here.
about it.
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
Yes.
So if the family hasn't made the turn, you can feel the vibe in the room. It's a little awkward. It's a little wooden.
Yeah.
You're not able to laugh about some of the things. You can't talk really about, plans, funerals, or what you want. Those things are really, if they're with us for long enough, and if we really put ourselves in our empathy as the oil in that machine, as it's dying and unfolding with the family, if we do our work well, then we can kind of guide them to making that turn as well. Some ways that we do that work. But when they do, when you've been in a room where both the patient and families made the turn, oh my God.
Beautiful.
The laughter, they'll bring wine, they'll drink wine, they'll toast. Dad wants to be an eye donor. You can donate your for cornea transplant. Really? And they'll laugh about it. Yeah, I'll one day run into you in your eyes somewhere. They'll laugh, then they'll cry, but they've made the turn. They love doing that, right? They'll talk about the funeral. Don't let Auntie Joan have the microphone. She's fucking crazy. And they'll laugh, and then they'll talk about stories where Dad did some really dumb, crazy thing, and everybody knew about it. He came back.
But I love that you just said that's really important for people to hear, that when you're not on the 180 turn back together, like facing death together, the person that's on the bed that's dying, it's like, okay, I've now faced it, and you're over there in denial. How lonely is that? That's really important, I think, to pause and be like, if it's hard for you, I honor that, but do it for your person. Do it for your just like this is a dumb analogy, but like Nevin's dog just passed away, and I was like, be there for your dog. When your dog's dying, don't just give it to the vet and say, you do it.
Be the face and he sees last. Absolutely.
I know it's hard. It's hard.
Rips our guts out.
100%, but
been there, done that. And what do? We go and get another dog.
Right?
And then
I know that.
Do it again twice. I have 2 dogs all the time. That's a great analogy.
Right? Be there.
Be there.
Be there for your human.
Be there, and don't be afraid to have the conversations and talk about it.
And
you guys are a beautiful picture of that, right? Well, you're able to do the work of dying. Sounds like everybody made the turn towards, and the grief was then able to be, it was anticipatory, all the different forms of grief. It was anticipatory, which didn't take away the grief when he died. That would have felt, I'm sure, like a train hitting you right in the gut. And just, the profound then implications of, we'll never talk about crazy spirituality again. We'll never walk together. We'll never drink whatever.
I mean,
sounds like with you guys, there's things there.
I love this turn towards though. And I'm wondering, Darrin, is there books or resources for people who don't have the you? Because you're extraordinary, and it doesn't seem like every hospital is going to have a you.
Well, there are me's out there. There
How
are
many minions?
I want to say no. Those young guys. It's all this. All are inferior. I want to say that. But what I would say is I've had an enormous gift when I was with Hospice Calgary. It was the most wonderful place to be. We were a 7-bed hospice, 7 patients, 4 doctors, team of nurses, myself.
Wow.
We literally everything. We were such a tight team. We worked together like you and I did. We could finish each other's sentences. Physician, I would be in family meetings, every patient mission meeting. So you didn't have this, oh, here comes the chaplain. I was part of the team every day with these families. So were the physicians. Physicians did spiritual care. I did. We all did. We were living the narrative of this family together. So that was such an intense environment. This is funny. I should probably say it was the worst thing that happened to me professionally was working there. Because now, no matter where I go, it will never be as good. Right? So my girlfriend works there. She's from the hall. We work together. And that's another story for maybe that's another podcast. Not in that way when we work together. Trust me. But everybody was such an integrated team. We knew when a patient asked us, how long does my dad have left? Many of us could often go in and say, I think, we should probably talk about days or maybe a few short weeks. Is there someone else that needs to come? It's probably time to call him. Because we were so integrated, we knew and we trusted each other. It was so intense. I owe what I do. Anything you've liked that I've said today, I owe to that 4.5 or whatever years of being there. It was so much, I would describe as probably the best hospice in the country. I would say the level of care is so good, and there's great hospices.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to anger some of my friends if they see this, but we also, I would say this in all reality, the level of care, the chef, I mean, he comes to your room and says, what can I make for you today?
Yeah.
Nothing came from a can unless it was a base starter. Nothing was frozen. Everything was homemade. I mean, orange based chicken soup I've never had before.
Wow.
Just amazing stuff, which is amazing considering people eat very little.
Yeah.
But the smell in the hospital, we make bread. We carry bread around, we do that, right? All of the senses ought to be engaged at end of life in that team. But the other thing we had, which I would feel comfortable saying probably they were the best hospice in the country, is that we had a big counseling agency. So of course I love therapists because I believe in it. I don't do it, but I work with you crazy people.
Right.
And it's so important. So we had grief therapists. We were also, we had another component called Children's Grief Center. So our expertise was kids in grief.
Yeah.
So we had the patients at end of life where I was, and then we had all the therapy and the programs, and I'd sometimes help down there. So it was such a good organization in that way.
There's the team again, right?
There's the team again, right? And so we could give patients that don't know, they'd come from the Foothills Hospital and we'd say, how was that? Bloody terrible. Couldn't wait to get to the hospice. How bad is the hospital?
That you're
That
looking
you're
forward to
looking forward to
hospice.
go to the place where you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But you get there and you find these angels that will
Wow.
preserve your dignity as they clean your bottom if you're incontinent.
Yeah.
And do it so dignified. And the bath, every second day patients could get a bath. And it was like an hour at the spa. There's candles and head massage and music.
Wow.
Nice.
We do all of that. So the level of care, these people, their families are just, they're open. They open right up. They're like little birdies in the nest.
Yeah.
Help me go through this dying.
Yeah.
So I owe anything I've learned, I owe to that experience, right? Like I would owe some of my work in understanding the therapeutic and psychological aspect, working with you, Michelle, or Bob, or whoever,
Conrad,
right? And Conrad. So yeah, I am grateful for that. So now I take that in the hospital, and it took about 8 months because, you know, hospital staff, they think, all right, here we got another chaplain, holy guy from the corner down there. Then they realized what I brought with end of life care. And the other thing I helped with was our hospice was the first to allow medical assistance in dying on site. So I've been very involved in a lot of those. So it's just different kind of dying where when the person dies, they're still, I mean, the moment before the last breath, and I've been in them. They're all crying and loving each other. We're gonna miss you, Mom. I love you so much. And they're crying. Thank you. You've been a wonderful mother. And then you begin the process, and 15 minutes later, they're dead.
Wow. Yeah.
So I owe it all to that.
Yeah. Amazing.
I didn't realize I love palliative end of life care. So I've avoided that in my career.
Yeah.
If I'd have known, I'd left the jail earlier. If I'd have known this feels like, but there's risks to it because we who work in it, you guys have this dilemma too. You have vicarious trauma.
Yeah, for sure.
Because of the people you treat and the things you hear. If you're empathetic, if empathy is your currency in working with people, you cannot not be a sponge. That stuff comes in. So I do a lot of time spend a lot of time in our educational part with nurses. How do you have a long nursing career knowing you're exposed to that? Because they don't think they are. Even doctors don't.
I know.
Often.
Yeah.
Right. And I, the guy, have to teach the women.
Right.
They laugh about it. Yep, here comes Darrin, the guy. It's going to teach us how to, live around these emotions and the feelings and all that. Right. But you cannot not take in vicarious grief. So
you got to get that out of your body.
What are you going to do? Are you going to be a bank account where that all deposits, or are you going to be a train station, for example, and that passes through? Because it has to pass through. It cannot go around us. So if I was with your family, I would, in a way, know that. And it sounds like the connections would have been very deep. You're able to talk about spirituality. Your whole family probably is, your dad, whatever. I would know that with you, once your dad died, I would have to do some self-work to let that vicarious grief flow through me. Because what I'm hoping to do, if I do my job right, is I'm absorbing some of that pain and grief there and helping it not as heavy on your shoulders, for example, right? And our nurses do that, and our physicians. So what we have to teach them is don't be afraid of that. Because doctors want to go in, spend 8 minutes and run.
They do sometimes. And it's interesting.
And they rotate. There's always a different doctor. In the hospice, no. those 4 doctors, if you were that with that one patient, they journeyed with you to death.
Yeah.
They sit for an hour. If you want to talk about your pain, they're doing some of my job.
Yeah.
Right.
It's phenomenal.
I like that analogy though of the train, because it's
Mhm.
something I know that we've talked about too, you and I, Alicia, like,
I go
you know,
through.
let it, yeah, like, you know, and I would say this to my mom too, like shoulders back, like let it flow through you, mom. Let whatever
Yeah.
you're feeling, let it flow
That's
through you.
fantastic.
All the way
Don't
out.
hold it, because when we get angry, we get frustrated, we get really sad, and we hold it in, then we can't process, then we're stuck there. So we have to still feel it. We have to cry, which we like, oh, but I'm letting it move. So I'm moving with people
Yeah.
with it. Like,
Yeah.
we would even dance. Like the night my dad passed away, we went home and we were drinking whiskey, which is his drink.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we danced and we sang and we let it move through us. And we're not always going to have each other there.
Quality posture. You mentioned something, you're talking to your mom.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? You're let it
Oh,
flow.
yeah. So, I mean, it's Michael Singer
Yeah.
is the one who, Untethered Soul is his book. And he talks about letting emotions flow through us. So he says, shoulders back and just let it flow.
So actually, you're
Actually,
adjust your shoulders.
Like
so the
actually
back.
visualize.
Yeah.
it, like,
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
I need that book.
yeah,
Okay.
Untethered
that's
Soul.
Untethered Soul. I'll give you.
I got to get that book. Yeah.
You will love
That's
it.
great.
You will really love it, especially in the
Our
like.
staff need things like that.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I would say that to him, even when she got frustrated, like when she was even caring for my dad earlier, she'd be like, he's making me frustrated. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Mom, shoulders back, just let it flow through you. Just
Yeah.
let it flow. It's just a feeling. Feelings are going to come and go.
Yeah,
That's
they're just
they're supposed to
There's
come.
importance.
Yeah.
Like
Don't
waves.
lock
Like
them in.
trains.
Yeah. They're like trains.
Don't lock
Yeah.
them in.
Don't lock them in.
Don't be a vault.
Yeah.
Yes,
And also
yeah.
lean back and observe what it's telling you. There's good information in emotion. Your values, what's important to you, things you stand for. So
Yeah.
there's really good information. But if you get in it, now you can't read it, you can't be with it.
Yeah,
So sit
just
beside
let
it
it in.
and let it like,
Yeah.
so I visualize like I'm a wave.
Is that what you do? You visualize
I
you're able
visualize
to.
the wave. Like I visualize like I'm on the side of the beach and there comes the wave and it's coming, it's gonna get me wet. And I'm gonna feel it, I'm gonna see it, I'm gonna taste it, I'm gonna hear what it's telling me, and then I go back out to the sea. And I'm on the beach. I'm I don't go to the water, I'm gonna come back. I'm on the shore.
Yeah.
And the wave
Yeah.
comes and I feel it, it goes back out. And it's a constant moving. Sometimes they're big waves,
Yeah.
sometimes they're little waves.
Yeah.
But they always touch me. I get a sense of them.
They always touch you. That's
They
important.
always touch me.
That's
I always, yeah.
Yeah.
that's a great
Yeah.
analogy.
Sometimes I'm on the sand and they're in my bathing suit and I'm full of
Yep.
sand and I'm like spitting out the water and
Messy.
messy.
Yeah.
Feelings are messy.
Feelings are messy. They are, but you have to let them flow.
You
And
do.
Yeah.
And it's true,
do.
even as professionals, we can hold other people's trauma. And so I
Oh,
like
yeah.
that
Oh,
visual
God,
too
yeah.
of the train and figuring out which ones are harder for you
Yeah.
to let go of
Yeah.
and which ones are like, no, I feel like I'm moving along
Yeah.
with this. Like, and you found that in what you're doing. You're like, I can enter in and I know when the door is open and I know the space and then I know the space when I back up and where I'm letting that go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you should write a book. I think because I'm asking, I'm like,
One day
is there,
I have to do that?
you should,
Right.
because it,
Sell it to my friends.
Yeah.
Self-published,
We'll
right?
for you.
and help other people that are professionals that need some of that guidance too, right? Because your experience is a gem there of, this environment that you were in that nurtured your learning and your takeaways.
And all these windy roads, like it wasn't like a linear road for you, all these windy roads,
Yes.
which actually is our life.
Totally.
Isn't that true?
It's all these windy roads.
Yeah.
You're like,
And instead of
It's a journey. It's not a destination.
Instead of regretting that, take the mitten off
take them in off.
and
Yeah.
accept, hey, this is
Bang some
this is the
things.
shape of my life. And
Yeah.
and the turns aren't always like gentle
No,
ones that were
like
planned.
sometimes
You hit the
Yeah.
concrete wall and
Yeah.
oh shit, now this is my life now. And all of those kinds of things. I lost my dad a little over 2 years ago.
Mm.
And so it in some ways that was where that rainbow analogy really worked for me, because it was a little more complicated. And sometimes maybe for your viewers, people lose their loved ones and then they are immediately thrust into regret because things weren't resolved. They had an argument or fight. You'd be surprised how many people these are the stories
Yeah.
where the last conversation was an argument.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
And nobody intends that, but that's human life, right? But people will really sabotage themselves and feel guilty and regret that a lot.
Yeah.
But it's very, 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 very common.
Yeah, for sure.
When my dad died, so when they divorced back in the 70s, dads disappeared. Like they went to where the work was, and that was up north. There was oil and gas and all this stuff. So for a lot of years, we didn't even see him. Nobody was mad. We weren't, it was nothing like that. It was just we just didn't see him.
Yeah.
When he was back, we'd see him again. It was wonderful. We just kind of picked up where we left off. Fast forward many years, he's getting older and he had some health things happen, and they got worse. And then he lived in Sundre. He was in the Sundre hospital, And I hadn't even seen him for a couple of years. So then one day I decided I got to go see my dad. So I go, and he was out of the hospital at home, and he had a colostomy bag. What the hell happened? Right? And then I'm guilty feeling because I don't know.
Big surgery.
Yeah, I wasn't involved in there, and we just drifted. That's just how drift works, right? So that was there, and so we started connecting, and then he got worse. He was supposed to get a reversal surgery. What happened is he went septic, almost died. And so in order to fix his bowel system, they put the colostomy on, let things heal, and then to go back, get it reversed. He's only 73, so he had more living to do. So he goes back in to the hospital because his doctor went and did a house call, found him on the floor because he wasn't nourishing himself very well, and his electrolytes were low. So it wasn't serious. They were just concerned, so they put him back in the hospital. All towards getting him to where he goes to surgery and gets this reversed and go back to normal life. My dad would rather eat a shotgun than have a bag on him for the rest of his life. That's not the thing. So he goes, they finally get his surgery, going in for the reversal. They open him up, saw there was more damage. He woke up not with a colostomy, now with an ileostomy, which is up higher. So now you're not getting hardly any nourishment, and he's starting to waste away. Well, long story short, he's in the hospital. This is now, it was like dominoes. It's created other issues, maybe not a strong heart, some other vascular issues, and he got sick. And it wasn't looking great. Still holding on the hope, and he was still a candidate that this ileostomy would give time, maybe another 6 months, and we'll get that all reversed. So I'm like, fuck, what am I going to do here? So I talked to our boss, and we had him transferred from Sundre to our hospital. So I had him there for a few months. So I'd be checking in on him every day, and he's a little high maintenance. He's getting me running errands, buy his particular Werther's, particular kind, a shaving bag. He shaved every day, having help with nurses, saw him unshaven because he might have a chance that that's my dad. Need to be shaved the whole bit. So he's now with us and all this. Back up the story a little bit. When he was in Sundre, he phoned me and he said, I got to go to a bone scan in Red Deer. Can you come get me? I have to be there in Red Deer at 7 a.m. So I'm up at like 3:30 or something. Go and get him. We go to Red Deer. He's this bone scan is 2 sessions. Imaging for 2 hours, an hour break, and then another hour. Like a full, they're trying to figure out what's this new infection happening, right? In between, we're sitting there, father and son, and bear in mind, I've missed my dad since I was 10. And we're talking about things, and I'm like, I want to talk about the things that maybe he doesn't know.
Oh boy.
So Dad, do you remember when Grandpa was out of the war? He was captured. He was in that POW camp. Do you remember when they escaped just as the Americans liberated? He was damaged, so Grandpa had to go into an English hospital in England for a year before he came back to Canada. Fell in love with his English nurse. Dad knew the story.
Yeah.
My grandma knew the story, who he was married to at the time during the war.
Wow.
And had 3 kids together. Grandpa falls in love with his English nurse. I don't care about telling the story. These stories are scandalous, but my family, we celebrate them because they're the twists and turns of life. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So Dad, do you remember when, I hope you guys were never judgmental of Grandpa for that. He was messed up from the war, and here this lovely nurse was caring for him for a year. He says, we all knew about that. And I said, well, what you didn't know is she had a son.
Oh, wow.
That you guys didn't know about.
You didn't know?
No. He says he did. They did. Yeah, his name's Sean, same name as my younger brother, but nobody knew. So Grandpa writes home to his dad, my great grandfather, says, I've fallen in love. I'm not coming home. My great grandpa writes back, the hell you are. You have a wife and 3 children. You get your ass back here as soon as you're released. So he did.
Yeah.
He came back and grew old with Grandma. Grandma knew about the nurse and somehow tolerated him having a picture of her in his wallet.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I told my dad, who I'd missed since I was 10, in between these sessions, that, he has a half brother somewhere in England. And I said, I hope you don't judge Grandpa for that. He said, no, I don't. But since we're talking about that, let me return the favor. You have a half brother too.
Oh, hello. Who doesn't have a half brother out there, Darrin?
Well, I didn't know.
Well, wow.
Yep. I didn't know that.
And turns.
The twist and turns.
Have you found him?
Well, yes.
Oh, wow.
So he told me about him. He, in all fairness and love to my mom, they weren't meant to be together. They married at like 19 and didn't know who they were. They lasted 12 years. Yeah. And things happened in the 1970s and the crow's nest passed when the moon is full. Obviously, they were friends with another couple, and Dad and the gal hit it off, and Craig was born.
That happened.
She says to my dad, I'm pregnant, Lauren. Oh, well, congratulations. I hope you guys are, no, Lauren,
No.
it's yours.
Yeah.
How do you know it's mine? What if it's,
Yeah.
no, we don't have that
Yeah.
kind of relationship. It's not good. It's yours. So he kept in contact
Wow.
with young Craig
Wow.
for years, would send him stuff on his birthday, would show up. Craig didn't know.
Just like Uncle.
Yeah, it was
Friend.
Uncle Lauren. Uncle Lauren. Uncle Lauren comes and he's fun. He sings with his guitar, takes us for a drive in his truck.
Wow.
He was always so good to me and my brother, Uncle Lauren. Well, yeah, I was good to you because, yeah.
Wow.
So Dad wanted, his dying wish was for us three, me and my two siblings, to meet our half brother.
Oh.
But we'd grown apart. Sean
Right.
was way up somewhere, my sister in Terrace, BC, and families, when they grow apart, suddenly in absence, this happens to humans, in absence, you have these little beefs that you think are bigger beefs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you don't talk to each other for a long time. You're not really mad, but you've grown apart. So Dad didn't like that.
Yeah.
And he wanted us to be together to introduce us to Craig. And then he took a turn for the worse. So he was in the hospital in High River. I got a call from the doctor on a Saturday saying things are going bad. His creatinine levels were over 500. If you're a nurse, you know that's kidney failure.
Okay.
He's dying.
Oh boy.
So I said, I'm on my way in, hold the ambulance because I want to take him to South Health
Right.
in Calgary to get the nephrologists and all the people on that, because he still wanted to get to this surgery. So I race in there and they held the ambulance and my dad's in there and he's getting confused because, things are going on for him.
Yeah.
But he was a very emotional, very sensitive, very spiritual man,
Mhm.
not religious at all,
Mhm.
but he was but in his oil and gas language, he didn't have the language to describe these kinds of things. Right. So
Yeah.
anyway, he's in the ambulance and he's teary and I'm teary. And he was very adamant. He said, if things don't go wrong, don't make them keep me alive. I said,
Right.
Dad, we're going to let you go if that happens. Okay. He's crying. He says, what a life, he said. I'll never forget that phrase. And I know that there was disappointment in it for some things in the life. And then he's holding hands and he's crying. He says, I love you.
Oh.
I love you too, Dad. And what I regret is I
What a
should have
life.
stayed in the ambulance, but because of COVID,
Ugh.
I didn't want Sean not to be. If I would have went to the hospital with him, that would have been the only one that could have been allowed.
Right.
Sean needed to get to him because
Oh.
their last conversation was an argument over a fuel tank.
Right.
Sean needed to see Dad
Yeah.
and Dad needed to see Sean. I just had 2 months with him.
Right.
Sean and him were the closest through their life. They worked together a lot. And so Sean needed to be there. So I didn't go and I wished I would have. So all through the night, he's going up and down there trying everything. The dominoes are falling. They were phoning me all through the night. Finally at 4 a.m, I think I'm going to go in. And they said, okay, we think we got him under control. I said, good. So I'll not come and Sean go in. My brother is terrified of hospitals and death and dying. He's scared of mannequins.
Oh.
He is so afraid. So we're like, okay, Sean, I've
You
just
got
talked
this.
to
You
Dad.
got
The
this.
doctor's,
Do this.
he's coherent. He's able to talk.
Yeah.
You're not going to see nothing
Go
free.
say your stuff.
Yeah.
Bald face lie. Sean gets there. And by now, Dad's lungs are filling. He is in an outright panic breathing crisis.
Oh no.
And screaming out because he can't breathe. That's what Sean walks
running.
into. Yep.
Oh my God.
That's what Sean walked into. So the staff there were wonderful. The doc takes him aside to get him away because he could see Sean and shows him the x-rays and said, this was your dad's lungs an hour ago. These are his lungs now. And they're completely different. So
Wow.
they bent the rules, let me come in.
Oh good.
We FaceTimed my sister from BC. So we made the decision, stop all of this, just make him comfortable, let him die comfortable, let him die peacefully.
Yeah.
And so we spent all of Sunday. They let us stay overnight in the room and they bring us warm
Wow.
blankets and everything. They were phenomenal. And I'm like, I've been in hospice. This better be good or I'm going to be
Right.
mad, right? I'm like, but I wanted to
I know
go.
those things.
Here's my dilemma. So I had my girlfriend come.
Yeah.
She was on the nursing care team because I wanted to go through that experience, not as a palliative care
Yeah.
professional. I wanted to be a son and a brother.
Yeah.
Period.
Mhm.
I don't want to be looking for medical things and worry about stuff.
Yeah.
I know what, if I see it, Laurel's going to see it. She's going to be on it.
Yeah.
Right. So we got some wine. He was settled peacefully all Sunday, overnight, Monday. And then we were on a FaceTime call with my sister. He's comfortable. He was so comfortable. I started to think, does this really need to happen?
Yeah. Maybe he's okay.
Right? So I had to get a doctor and I should know better for what I do. Right.
Right.
No, doctor came and he said, we could take him off of this. The underlying physiology is exactly still the same.
Yeah.
And that's like, okay. And then this young doctor said, if it were my dad, I would be doing the same. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I just need to hear it from a
Yeah.
doctor.
Yeah.
I knew that,
Yeah.
right? I knew,
Yeah.
but I need to hear from a doctor. So an hour later, Sean and Dad, they're both oil patch guys. but they have this deep spiritual connection.
Hmm.
You know about. They're always connected somehow, even in their arguments, which were many, right? And anger.
Right.
They might not talk to each other for 2 weeks out of complete anger, right? Sean knew, I gotta go. I gotta go. Somehow, okay, we knew how Sean rolls. So he goes, he gets to Airdrie. That's as far as he got, and I had to call him. Dad just took his last breath.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm there, I'm bawling. My sister's on FaceTime, and she's the words in the family. You think I got words? You should meet my sister.
Yeah.
So she's that. Sean's the spiritual kind of senses things, and I'm like, I do this for a living, and I don't get signs and all that. Right?
Yeah.
I don't get that. It's like, am I missing the boat here? I'm feeling cheated, right? So Dad dies, and they used to tease me at the hospice that I never helped because I didn't think it was my area. I wasn't invited, I thought, to do post-death care. When someone dies, for nursing staff, it's like a sacred ritual. Washing the body, they use warm water. They treat the person dead as if they were living. Tell them by name, I'm just washing you now. So they used to tease me that I never joined them to do that.
Yeah.
So when my dad died, the hands that were once little and held his hand as a father, with my girlfriend showing us how to do it, we washed my dad's body.
Wow.
That was my first time.
Wow.
Wow. Hard to do. Yeah.
So there's a band of black.
Mm-hmm.
And I think grief, I do think from people that we work with, never goes away.
No.
It never shrinks. And actually, I got something often used. Yeah. So in my own grief therapy kind of work with people, we often think grief is like this, that big black bowling ball here is near the death, that it shrinks over time.
Right.
Right. But it doesn't.
Yeah.
I think a better way to look at it is it's always the same.
I love that.
But we, the container of human spiritual living and essence, we grow in our capacity to carry that grief. I don't want my grief to be less about my dad. I think it won't. I want it to be the same. I want to grow, which is really good, because when we get to complicated grief, if we have that model, then it's about human growth. So that's where the therapists are really important, because you're helping people grow. It's not just grief resolution, because it doesn't resolve, won't go away, won't get smaller. And I don't want it to.
No,
he meant that much to me, even in his absence. Right.
Yeah.
So, but when I hit the wall and stop growing, where can I find someone that can prompt that growth to continue, right? That therapeutic growth to continue. So I can contain those things. And other griefs that life dishes our way, right?
So grief is one of the many things. Like grief is one of the most profound things that can grow us and it can expand our perceptions, our conceptions, our mortality, or all the stuff, like our, who do I want to be? Who am I in the world? So there's obviously any traumas, other things can do that too. But I think grief can be one of the most profound, beautiful ways to grow that container with us. That's such
it just hurts like hell.
It hurts like
it just hurts. And you have to feel it, because if you don't, the people who don't feel it, sometimes I've encountered where
people still stay small.
And they're staying locked, right? They're like, no, I'm not facing that. I'm just going to hold that. And then that just, that holds them in that place. They don't get to grow and keep evolving. They're stuck. And you have to let it move. You have to let yourself cry. You have to let yourself, whatever it is, like, just be like, it's okay. I have to let myself do this.
So the gift in it, right? There's the gift in pain, which we all know, but there's a gift in death and dying that we get to, when you're ready, expand your container to hold that bowling ball that's massive, that your container gets bigger. So there's more space to flow around and to be in other parts of your life and to integrate it into different relationships.
Right.
You still exist.
It's all about relationships. We're a social creature. Which is why you guys need to exist, because we are such a social creature, and relationships are profoundly deep and meandering and different and
pains in the ass, complex.
And at the end of life, it seems like all of these relationships come back, right? Or it's like we always say that, in life, the quality of your relationship is the quality of your life. So, at the end of life, people aren't thinking, I should have made that investment. I should have gotten that extra property. That really would have made a difference. I should have spent 16 hours at the office instead of 15 and a half. Nobody says that at the end of life. They say, I wished I would have done that and ran to, New Mexico or Arizona and went rogue. And they say those things. If they do regret, they missed where they
adventures, experiences,
people.
The
people. That's the other one. Did you connect with the people?
Well, we're here. That's why we're here on this planet. We're here in human incarnate. We're human Like we're energy in human form.
Yeah.
Right? To have to be what?
Spiritual beings having a human experience.
Totally. To
Yes.
have those experiences, to taste, touch, smell,
Yeah.
do the things.
Yeah.
Which leads us to our last thing your listeners might want to talk about. What about the spiritual, mysterious parts of death and dying?
Yeah.
Where the mediums come in and say,
Yeah.
right? Like my sister goes to Reiki and the Reiki lady says, there's a man here.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to overpower the moment. He wants to come in very subtly.
Mhm.
Is there someone you lost? It was like 3 weeks after dad's death.
Yeah.
Right? So she's wailing in tears and crying.
Yeah.
I'm like, why don't I where's me?
Yeah.
Sean's having this kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? This is nuts. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so what's your beliefs about that?
You know, that's a great question. Here's what I wonder about. This is nuts. When the year later we met Craig, our half brother, welcomed into the family. My mom is having to dinner and everything.
Wow.
We celebrate this guy that is so excited. When we told him what happened, he started crying with my sister. She told him that he didn't know
that you're actually siblings.
Yeah. So there was silence. He started crying. He said, I knew something was off. I knew
Mhm.
I'm nothing like, we went through that and started crying. Then we met him. We took one look at him. Like, that's my grandma. My God, there's no need for a DNA test here. This is legit, right? So nuts. Next summer, we're all together. Craig's with us. My sister's here, myself, Austin, my brother's son, my nephew, and my girlfriend. And we're taking dad's ashes. We're going west of Sundre because he used to like going to sit out there and watch the wild horses because they're all wildies out there, right? He loved that. So we're like, it'll be like a Norman Rockwell painting.
Right.
It'll be beautiful. We'll go out
Spread
there.
the ashes with the horses running by.
We'll look for the river and the horses will absolutely be right there.
Of course they will be.
Right. But I'm doubting this. My sister's like, oh, that's going to happen. Right. And I'm like, I know me. It's going to be not like that.
Yeah.
So we find this amazing spot. We park. We've got some beers. Austin's carrying my dad and won't let go and all of that. He felt that was really important to him. We get down to this beautiful spot in the creek. And everybody has their turn to take a scoop of dad and put him in the creek and say something and tears and all that. And I'm still, I'm right in the motions of the moment. I'm grieving, doing all the normal things. Austin, my nephew, he's standing there and 40 or 50 little butterflies just start landing like this, right? All over him. And they're flying around. They're just landing.
Wow.
Sun's beating down. It was the Norman Rockwell moment.
Wow. You're like, okay.
So I'm like, I sort of believe is what he said. So we're all done. We're going back.
Why you don't see things or feel things?
Right?
This, right?
I know. You're on to me. So this is all done. We're going to go back to vehicles. I got to pee. So I'm in the bush. I'm the last one to come up the road, up from the creek to the road. I'm coming up and they're all on the road. They're like, shh. What?
Horses are there.
The horses were on the road.
Of course they are. Wow.
Yeah.
They were there.
And you still only sort of believe?
I don't know.
Well, it's a part of him. Alicia. It's a part of him.
Okay.
A part of him is it's still a part of you is still in that box. There's still.
Okay, here's
that,
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
But it's science. It's not even like it's science. So we all are energy. You can agree with that because you can measure. You can measure the energy between our protons and neutrons. We already know that.
100%.
You can measure the energy between the sun
and energy
stars.
doesn't die. It has to live on.
And the equation, the mathematical equation of the energy between our protons and neutrons and between the stars is exactly the
This
same.
finger, when the stenographer's machine is smoking. Yes.
Slow down.
Yeah,
This is the chord.
She gets excited and then she
She did that in court once. The judge had to admonish
The
her.
judge was like, "This thing is smoking. Slow down in court." I'm like,
I'm right with you. Please carry that.
Okay.
thought.
But we believe that. Do you agree that so far? Like, if we know that we can measure,
100%.
and we have scientific mathematical equations that can
Absolutely.
measure that stuff. Okay.
Absolutely. I don't even need science to know
Okay.
that somehow energy your dad, my dad, you and I, must have some form of vibrational signature, energetic signature.
Yeah.
Of who we are.
Because I don't know if it's just one.
That maybe.
Because
that must live on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they gracefully, like butterflies, come through our lives. And
Yes.
we're not in a box like a can.
Yeah. You cannot create nor destroy energy.
No.
So energy
No.
exists. Just like right now, you're drinking dinosaur pee in that cup. You call it coffee, but really that's been here for how long's the earth been here?
100%.
14 billion years, let's just
14
say.
billion.
14 million years. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's only one body of water on this planet. There's no new water.
No.
The same water that's been here for 14 billion years. It's in different forms. It's a coffee, it's a tear, it's pee, it's water, it's whatever. It's an ocean.
Recirculates.
Recirculates.
Thank you for that reminder.
Energy, as you drink your dinosaur pee,
Cheers.
but energy is exactly the same. There's one energy
Mhm.
and it's in different forms. So it only makes scientific sense to me spiritual sense to me
Yeah.
that when energy leaves this form, right now it's embodied in this body in all my cells,
Yes.
but there's also energy in those trees and in everything we're sitting on right now.
Yeah.
So when it leaves this body, it will still exist. It can't not exist.
Right.
And so how we receive it, that is maybe the mystery of like those butterflies. Am I receiving all of it energy in that? Is it just part of the energy in that? Because I don't know, there's so much energy in this body that can it just all be in one?
And
Maybe
can
it's
close it off then, right? Because we might have limiting beliefs or attitudinal presentations of ourselves that aren't open.
Yeah. My grandma said when she died, she said, I will leave you signs. I think my mom said to her, like, she's wild rose is her rose. Like she's a wild rose. And Winter just said this other day, and she doesn't even know the story. Like, actually, I'll tell the story after. So I'll leave you signs. So that after she died in the spring, like early, it was February. So early that spring, this is Saskatchewan. There's like wild roses sometimes. The entire bushes, the entire area we live in was covered in pink roses. Not planted, the entire area was covered in pink roses.
And that shouldn't have happened.
And that shouldn't have happened. No. And I have another story. So
Oh, well, I mean,
it's true.
And we'll share different things. Kind
Whatever
of
the signs
like
are.
last night, Winter
they
said,
happen.
listen, Winter doesn't know that story, but last night Winter said, because we were doing that thing last night, and so people showed up and someone said, maybe it was your grandma. Winter was like, no, she'd have been a rose. And I was like, how'd you know that? She's like, I don't know. I just know she'd be a rose. I didn't think she even knows that story. I was like, that's interesting that she just knew she'd be a rose. That was her response.
I think if people are open to this, of being more open to this spiritual realm and connecting beyond, I love Gabby Bernstein's stuff. So her book, her book was like, set me on a different trajectory.
Is that right?
Yeah, about 4 years ago. Some pretty incredible things started to happen because I closed it off as a kid.
She has the website as well, right?
She does,
yeah. And it was her book. Super Attractor was the one I walked into the bookstore, and I was like, I feel like I need to buy this book. I mean, the title was Super Attractor, felt like it was attracting me too, but it started to change everything because I turned everything off as a kid.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to open it up again. And my 6-year-old had all of the abilities. So I was like, I need to turn this back on. So I would say you should, like, if you haven't, read some, because she gives you tips on how to actually start to open
I have been meaning to read her stuff more. I found her online. I found her webpage.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, at first I'm like, this would be great for the people I work with, right?
Yeah. It always starts.
I'm curious. I did read a book though, and this goes back into that evolution of mine back in 2010, 11 or whatever. I read an interesting book that was written by a psychiatrist, Harvard trained, very materialistic here and now, who was doing hypnotherapy with his clients and regression therapy.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, these prior lives they lived started.
Yes. Who was that? I read that book.
Michael Newton.
Yes.
And then there's Brian Weiss, Journey of Souls.
Yes. Yep.
I think there was a pivotal shift from a book, 2 books, those 2 for me.
Because he was a non-believer. And
he was a non-believer. Both were non-believers.
And then there's another one in that same book.
And it was all from their practice.
Right? That was the same book. Yeah.
And they didn't want to.
The same book about a heart transplant.
Yes.
And the guy was like having memories of his heart in another body.
Yes. You've told me about that.
Neither of them wanted to come forward with these stories because their peers would ostracize them. Because they're just like, no, that's the here and now, and that's it, right? So the stories, this one was this lady who, in hypnotherapy, she was from China, and she was having these terrible nightmares. So they found him. They flew her with an interpreter to the U.S. for therapy with him to do regression therapy. She spoke not a word of English, just Chinese Mandarin. Yeah. And so the interpreter in the sessions would do all the interpreting.
Right.
He put her under in hypnosis, and she started speaking English. The interpreter didn't know what to do. It was like a moment where everybody's like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Wow.
So he goes into a lot of that. And we've had, my sister and I, my daughter and I have had a lot of conversations about that kind of thing. I think that's probably where I land. That we are energy, and maybe we have a choice to return and live another human life in order to achieve full unconditional love ourselves and everybody and everyone, every sentient being that we encounter. And if that's true, then, and your part of energy is true, then our dead are truly near us. Even when we're not aware and we're doing practical things, we're zoned into a different mode and all of that. Our dead are with us, and our complaints that they're not sending postcards, turning lights off, and doing spooky things is simply because we're not attuned to the energy that's there. I think that makes more sense to me than I'm going to create you out of dust. And if you make the wrong decisions, you're going to burn forever
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Or if you're born on a different continent that never heard this story.
Yeah.
And the anger and the judgment with that.
Yeah.
I think this is a better.
No, the idea of we're
thing.
leveling towards love. It's just always moving.
That's the target.
That's the
Yeah.
target.
Yeah.
Because that energy is that it's pure wisdom, connection, love. Like it's what it is.
Yeah.
You lean back into it. That's what you feel
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
your whole body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
people want
I
to know,
love
do
that.
the dying have these experiences? So you work in a hospice, everybody wants to know, you must have them, where their relatives come who are long deceased and all this. And this part of human nature, so the people that work in a place like that are super spiritual, they see all the super spiritual things, the ghosts and all the stuff happen, right? Those of us who are a little bit more made of earth and dirt and rocks.
Skeptical.
Yeah. We may not see all of that.
Yeah.
So I try to approach it that way so that when I do encounter something,
Yeah.
I'm not just so projected already to believe it.
Yeah.
So I give myself room to have a little bit of doubt.
Yeah.
So I had a patient. We all had this patient. We all still talk about her. A few years ago, she took forever to die. End stage, cancer, metastasized. It was ovarian. That went everywhere. Well, they did surgery and something came back, and then so she was there for end of life care. Stopped eating because she couldn't and didn't want to, and I think was still 3 to 4 weeks. Just
Without food.
oh yeah,
Wow.
you can go a long time without food.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just liquids,
Yeah,
right?
it's
She
liquids.
was-
Yeah,
Oh,
she was
okay.
starting slowing down with liquid
Yeah.
intake and all of that. There would be a Thursday. I didn't work Fridays. It was a 0.8 position, so I would go home on Thursday, and before I left, I'd go and see her. I'd call her Susan, let's say, and I'd go in, and this might be the day I see Susan. I'm like, she's not going to be here on Monday when I come back. I know it.
Yeah.
She's not responsive. Monday we were chatting. She had friends over, and they were drinking tea, the friends, and all this. Thursday now, she's really declined. She's been here long. Yeah, she's wanting to die.
She's ready.
Get this show on the road here, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Ready for
she's
next.
got her wish. I see her.
Yeah.
She's looks like she's almost actively dying,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to see her Monday. So I just gently put a hand on her and said, thank you for the conversations, Susan. Have a peaceful weekend.
Yeah.
And went home.
Yeah.
Monday I come back. She's up talking with her friends and all this. This kept happening. She just would
that
not
was-
die.
That was my dad.
That was your
was the
dad.
same.
Totally.
She would get to this place where when she's dying, we used to call her the woman with a foot in both worlds, one
Yeah.
in ours and the other in the next.
Yeah.
She was like that for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we all have our stories,
Yeah.
the staff, about encountering Susan and this dying experience, right?
Mhm.
But she was able to come back from her weight leaning on that foot in the next world,
Yeah.
back to this one,
Yeah.
and tell us what it was like.
Yeah. I love it.
She hadn't died though,
That's
but she would
incredible.
describe it. And when someone's making up a story, because you can tell the way they're telling it, and you can tell that it's information from their previous belief system.
Right.
That was
Yeah.
not happening.
No.
She was struggling to figure out how to describe how beautiful the feeling was of
Mhm.
what somewhat dying was like.
Yeah.
She said, it's a world of only love.
Yeah.
There's only, it's so strong.
Yeah.
And the colors, she said, they're so vivid. It's like that movie, she said. And I went, Avatar? She's like,
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
it's so vivid like that.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I want to go there.
Mhm.
I want to be, she had a bad, estranged relationship that was part of her pain and dying.
Yeah.
And that was not even a thing
Yeah.
as this was happening.
Yeah.
So she'd start dying again and have this warm place or whatever to come back and tell us.
Wow.
Wow.
She's the one that sticks out in
Okay.
4 or 5 years
That's
there.
cool.
Go Susan.
But I had another one recently. She did die for like 5 minutes, and they brought her back to
Yeah.
resuscitate her.
Yeah.
And she described fields of wheat. You know how it blows in the wind?
Yeah.
Like that scene in Gladiator.
Yeah.
with
Yeah. Yeah.
Russell Crowe.
Yeah. Mhm.
That was her. It was like that. And she was aware the doctors were doing the stuff. And
She was just so peaceful. And
yeah,
she's like,
she was peaceful, but she
Good.
came back. So, and she did actually clinically die for a minute or 2
Yeah.
or 3 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But she was aware of dying
Yeah.
and aware they were working on her,
And so peaceful.
and aware that
Wow.
these fields of gold and wheat, which was calm and loving.
Yeah.
So we have these stories.
Right?
We have these stories.
I love
Death hints at us that, the show's not done.
No.
It's not the end of it.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. And that just even reminds me of like that song, Live Like You Were Dying. You know,
Mhm.
like if
That
you,
country song.
Yeah.
I love that song. And it's like,
Ride that bull, right? Who
yeah,
cares?
do
Never
that
heard
thing.
it.
Go sky,
Do
like,
it.
do it. Take
Do it.
take off the mitten.
Take the mitten off, right?
Yeah, just
Go rogue.
go and just live this journey, because I mean, let's hope there is more. I believe that there's more. There's next lives and past lives, but for whatever people believe, I think that you've given some opportunity as somebody who is trained as a chaplain, that there's more options out there, that it doesn't have to be this box. And like, thank you for like coming and talking openly like this, because I didn't know that it would go this way either. I thought
we had questions
that you were gonna,
like, we're not going to go with those questions.
Thought we were gonna.
We kind of rolled that way before, though.
Yeah. But thank you. You gave so many good takeaways and just opening up the conversation for people, I feel, who probably some might be in a religion that feels very boxed, or people who don't talk about death who are like, oh, maybe we should talk about this. It's actually like leaning in. Did you say leaning in or circling around? Back towards death. Yeah.
And the process of
leaning in is a great analogy as well. Right. Lean in, because we want to lean away from it.
I
love that. That's a great analogy as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much for joining us.
We're really glad you're here with us on this journey.
The best way to support this podcast is to subscribe and give it a 5-star review.
See you next time.
This has been a Bread Dog Studios production.